We'll just wait a few more minutes. I think a couple of people are getting on just so before we begin. All right, I'm just going to get us started here this evening. Welcome tonight to the special meeting of the Takoma Park City Council. It's been a while since we've discussed the Takoma Junction redevelopment project, and tonight is going to be a night of presentations to familiarize ourselves with it again and to go over the project as it now stands. I'm going to turn over in a minute to our city manager, but first I also just want to say thank you to the city staff and also to the Montgomery County planning department for all their work on this project. And thank you so much, Elza, for being with us tonight, as well as folks from Neighborhood Development Company and a bunch of other people who worked on this project tonight. I really appreciate you taking the time. So we'll have a number of presentations to make sure that we're all, grounded in where we stand with the project right now. There are a lot of documents on the city website that you can follow along with as well. And then approximately around 7:15 after the presentations, we'll be going into breakout rooms. The way this is going to work, and staff will describe it in more detail in a moment. We have 3 topic areas that you were asked to select before when you signed up for this evening, and everyone will go to their first choice, have about 20 minutes in there, and then for discussion, and then we'll switch after that, and then you can go to your second choice. But this is really the beginning as we consider the revised plans. We have lots of meetings coming up. So after tonight, on Wednesday night at our regular city council meeting, we will have a work session. And that's a time when I think council will ask questions based on what we've heard tonight and the discussions in the breakout rooms. I want to thank Elza because he said he would come back and join us on Wednesday night because we may have some questions for him then. So I just wanted to make sure my colleagues on the council know that he will be with us again on Wednesday night. And then on Wednesday, April 28th at our regular council meeting, we will have that night two things will happen on the 28th. We will start our regular council meeting probably around 6 o'clock, and we'll have time for groups that want to make longer presentations than normal at the beginning of the council meeting. So how that's going to work and all the logistics for that, you can find on the city website, and it describes it there. But we know that there are different groups of people who may want to join together and present their comments together. So we wanted to provide that opportunity, and that will be on Wednesday, April 28th. In addition, for individuals who want to provide comments, we also have a public hearing that night on the project. And that is on, and then we'll have another council work session. And then we are scheduled on Wednesday, May 5th to vote on a resolution on the project. That resolution will then be transmitted to the Montgomery County Planning Board for consideration. And then the next step would be for the site plan to go before the Montgomery County Planning Board for final consideration, likely in late May. So that's just a broad overview. I also know my colleagues on the city council, I think Councilwoman Kostick has already started having lots of meetings. I don't know if she's ever stopped having meetings, but I know she's doing that. And a number of other colleagues have also set up smaller neighborhood meetings. In addition, there's always opportunities to email individual council members, the city clerk with your comments. And we also have online a way that you can submit questions. We're trying to facilitate as much as possible the sharing of questions and information. And so if you get on the city website, you can see how you can do that as well. So I'm gonna stop talking now, sit back, listen to the presentations, and turn it over to our city manager.
Thank you very much. Welcome and thank you all for joining us and joining the council for this presentation regarding the Takoma Junction Redevelopment Project. Ms. Cook-Gaines, could you share your screen, please? We'll get there. There we go. So for tonight's agenda, we have 5 different segments. We have a presentation by our Economic Development Manager, Samira Cook-Gaines, on the economic development setting of the project. Then we get a project overview by the Neighborhood Development Company CEO and founder, Adrian Washington, and Senior Associate, Jingjing Liu. Then we have an overview of the Montgomery County Development Review process by Chief of Down County Planning, Elza Heisel-McCoy with the Montgomery County Planning Department. Then our Community Development Manager, Roz Grisby, will give an overview of the elements that have been reviewed by city staff. We'll come together briefly, and then it'll be time for breakout sessions. And we have 3 different topics in the breakout sessions. One is on parking, one is on public space, one is on stormwater management, trees, and sustainability. And I think that something that's very important to these are that these breakout rooms are ones in which the city council has a role to play in determining whether or not their goals are met, given new information or the need to consider potential trade-offs. So they were chosen very specifically to get information, clarifying information to the public, information from the public in advance of the council's consideration of the site plan. As the mayor went through the next steps, we have a city council work session on April 14th, the public hearing on April 28th with the work session, and then the city council vote on May 5th before it goes to the planning board. I'm very pleased with the amount of attention that our many staff have given to this project, and you'll see as we go through these plans. I'm very pleased with the detailed work of the various county agencies that have contributed to the work that will be presented by Elza Heisel-McCoy. And one of the things I want to call out especially is that Neighborhood Development Company has done an excellent job over the years of hearing suggestions from the staff, suggestions from the public, and responding to requirements or suggestions by various agencies. And so there's been a number of changes in the site plan that you'll see today. So now I'm pleased to turn this over for the economic development setting with Economic Development Manager, Samira Cook-Gaines. Samira?
Thank you, Susie. And I will just jump right into our next slide. I am here today to really talk about setting the stage around economic development in this project. Our economic development department is relatively new, about 2 years old. So our department came a little bit after our partnership with the Neighborhood Development Company. To start with, I want to ground where we are with the city of Takoma Park in our economic development goals and strategies. To start, there are 2 guiding documents really around economic development and two guiding documents that also provide directives to us as staff to execute on as we do our daily work. That first one is the city council priorities. These council priorities are set and reviewed every year. And this is kind of the guiding directive or force as we look at policies, programs, and even the partnerships that we make with other organizations, such as the Neighborhood Development Company. These are the guiding directives from our city council elected officials. The second one is a document, and it's our Housing and Economic Development Strategic Plan. This document was a number of years in the making. Data and research around our small businesses, the workforce needs, and the surrounding areas in comparison to Takoma Park. So just to highlight some of the council priorities that really do guide the work that we do every day and for economic development, I'll highlight one in particular. The first is mitigating the impacts of COVID-19 on the city operations and the community. That's the most obvious and new council priority. The others have been with us, were with us all of last year and are following this year. One is a livable community for all, a fiscally sustainable government, an economically sustainable community, an engaged, responsive, and service-oriented government, and then finally, community development for an improved and equitable quality of life. This is the one that hits home for me and the one that I really do make sure that I am a good steward of. Community development for improved and equitable quality of life. That improved piece is the piece where you start to feel the rub. Improvement looks like and feels like different things to different people. But for me, the improvement has to be about community economic development. And that includes everything from workforce, small business support and growth, as well as the idea of maintaining the infrastructure for a community that is economically sound. So diving a little deeper into our housing and economic development strategic plan, there is a goal that really focuses on preserving, producing, and protecting. And that goal is to really make sure that everyone in our community can benefit from a high quality of life, a stable tax base, and overall good to survive economic well-being. And what we need to recognize is that not everyone experiences Takoma Park the same way. So it is a goal to ensure that that's really something we focus in on. And in that, we focus on 3 different versions of this goal. First is preserving existing businesses and affordable housing in Takoma Park, including in revitalizing areas. Producing, we need to produce more housing and opportunities for businesses to start and grow across our all income spectrums. And when I say income spectrums, I'm not just talking about residents, I'm also talking about entrepreneurs and business owners. And we want these opportunities to be across the city and across all neighborhoods and areas. And then protecting, we want to protect our renters, homeowners, and local businesses from discrimination and displacement. And we want to protect our environment from destruction. So this is a major goal of our housing and economic development strategic plan. So as we start talking through this project, I really do want you to remember that this is the proximate goal here. This is how we continue to have a thriving community. There are a few objectives that go along with this goal. The first is attracting new businesses to Takoma Park and facilitating the growth of existing businesses, particularly those that help with workforce needs. We want to bring in new businesses, but we also want to help the businesses who are here to grow, become stronger. These are our homegrown, hometown businesses. And they are oftentimes the first ones who will hire from their local community. So we want to help them grow. And as we look at economic development partners and projects, we're looking for folks who are going to help us meet these goals. We also want to emphasize local ownership and other goals as defined by the plan. We also want to encourage the construction of new, moderate, and higher density infill commercial, residential, and mixed use development. things that are consistent with our city's sustainability and climate action plan. As many of you know, as residents, our housing stock and our commercial stock is very much aging. And when it comes to things like our sustainability and climate action goals, we really have a great opportunity with redevelopment and new development. So just wrapping up our objectives and giving a moment over to our development partners. We really are interested in making sure that we have modern, updated spaces. Currently, our commercial spaces, as I said, they're aging. They are not ADA compliant. Many of them are not meeting their sustainability goals. And as we found out during this pandemic, they're not meeting public health or safety goals. They have become very much a challenge when you talk about things like space, social distancing, even things like filtration systems. We really do struggle in our city when we have not just aging housing, but also aging commercial space, which is not conducive to attracting new businesses or space for our folks who exist here now to grow. And what I'd like to say is that this modern updated space is to be pandemic informed, right? Not created on behalf of the pandemic, but the pandemic has taught us some lessons that should just go along with all of our redevelopment and all of our policies, programs, procedures, the way we do things as we all sit here on a digital meeting. So for us, we really are interested in spaces that are pandemic informed, but that just means that these are modern spaces for modern times. And then there's the general support of community economic development. Now, economic development can be a word that sounds distant, but let me put this piece in the front. My work has always been in community economic development. And what that means is that there is a focus on circulating the assets, the wealth, the prosperity within the city, within the community, within neighborhoods. So when we think about the support of community economic development, the first thing that comes to mind for me around this new project, and the thing that excites me most about it, is that as your economic development manager, I am already facing a lot of local competition for space from our businesses. So for example, I've been approached by 2 nonprofits who operate within Takoma Park, who are interested in bringing their services to Takoma Park, expanding their services in Takoma Park. We have no space for them. All the seats are full up and there is no place to sit. So those local organizations are now, and again, there have been 2 in the last year and a half that are now looking in Silver Spring. We're losing the opportunity for our own community to gain the benefits of bringing in local organizations that want to be here. So when you think about things like office space is what a nonprofit uses to be here in a community and then focus their services on communities. So right there, our community economic development piece, that's something that really excites me about the project and we really need to focus in on. Another are just our small businesses. Takoma Park businesses are pandemic withstanding. Many of them have been thriving for years, but not able to stretch or grow in the way that they can hire new people, create additional revenue. These are things the more money that our businesses make, the actually the better our community is, because our businesses circle their dollars in our Takoma Park city community. And then the other piece of it is kind of just more aesthetic and more of an aesthetic and comfort piece. I'm not specifically talking about ADA compliance when I say walkability. This walkability is really about quality of life and quality of life for our residents. This location is really a spot where people are not really encouraged to stay for a while or go to other areas of the commercial district. So we are looking forward to new modern building that can create some level of walkability for our residents and actually become more of an economic stimulus for our existing businesses in the area. And I should be very clear about an equity piece here. We have a number of businesses owned by people of color in that area, and they own their building. So some of this, when we're talking about how we invest in a community, you also want to think of where in the community you're investing and who's immediately impacted. If we're serious about racial equity goals, we should be serious about where we invest as well. And then lastly, it's really our economic development challenge is really about a need for investment, maintenance, and sustainability just to keep up. When I first started this position, I had a number of folks ask me, well, what do we need economic development for? And I think the best analogy I can give you is really putting a glass dome around our city. It's very much the idea that nothing can get in, we can get out, we can't get out, and everything in there is protected. But the truth is, it's not protected. We have to remove that dome. One, we want to be as diverse and as inclusive as we always have been. And when you put that dome on top, it's a little bit difficult to say that we are an open community when we're not interested in bringing others in. The other piece of it is that our beloved city of Takoma Park, without additional economic development, and I'm being clear, community economic development, without any additional redevelopment, renovations, upgrades, and maintenance, will just decay from inside that glass. And I'm here to really work with the team and our development partner to make sure that we're able to provide those spaces to be able to attract those new businesses, provide spaces for businesses to grow, provide spaces for nonprofits, and finally, to provide the opportunity for our surrounding community to leverage this asset. So with that said, I will pass it to Adrienne Washington and open the screen for faces. And Adrienne, feel free to take it from here.
Okay, well, first of all, can everybody hear me? You always got to ask that these days, and I believe Jing Jing has brought up the presentation. Let me know when you're ready.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, but it's not in full screen.
Hold on. That shows full screen?
Yes, that looks good to me. Can everybody else see it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Samira, and thank you to everyone here tonight, the members, the mayor, the members of the city council, the staff, and most importantly, the citizens of Takoma Park. So before I get started, just in the same way that the city manager acknowledged our efforts, I would like to acknowledge the efforts of the city staff and the Montgomery County planning staff. You citizens are blessed with a great team. The staff is hardworking, they are smart, they are dedicated. They have pushed us in many ways, and we've pushed back sometimes, but it's always been in the spirit of making this project better. And I think that the collaborative effort that we have has made this project, which was good from the beginning, even better. So I'd like to give a shout out to Susie, to you and all your team, and to Elza and your team as well. So first slide, please. So we're going to go over, and some of this is we're going to go back in history a bit, because I realize it's been a while before we've been before you. So we want to refresh people's memory of who we are, you know, why we believe NDC was the best choice. I can't speak to why the city chose us, but I believe, you know, I want to talk about why we think we're the best choice for this project. Our vision for Takoma Junction. I know we'll get a lot more into detail in this breakout session, but I want to give overall kind of why, you know, we've designed what we've designed. We're going to catch you up on what we've been working on since the last time we presented to the city. Much more detail on the updated site plan, and then a look ahead to where we are going. Thanks. Next slide, please. So as a background of who we are, the Neighborhood Development Company, we have, first of all, a 22-year track record. So we've been around, we've done some things. We are Black owned. I bring that up because I know there's been a lot of discussion around racial equity, as it should be. This is not the time right now, but I do have some experience in that matter, and I welcome that discussion when the time comes to discuss it. We delivered over 1 million square feet. That makes us a developer of some size, but not a big developer. I think it puts us in medium size, and I think really it's kind of the right size developer to do a project like this. We have always been a force of positive change, going back to our very first project in 1999, up to, and even more so for the projects that we are working on right now. We focus on neighborhood retail, obviously very important to this. We also focus on market rate, affordable and workforce housing, both rental for sale. So we have experience with different types of development types, and we have experience with projects that make a difference. And since inception, you know, we developed, you know, we use a lot of money in real estate transactions. We worked across 19 distinct neighborhoods. And so I think it just gives you an example of the breadth of experience that we have brought to this project. Next slide, please. Here's our portfolio of selected projects. These are not all the projects. These are some of our newer ones. You can see Takoma Junction there in the lower portion. Again, sort of the experience of different breadths of properties we've done. We've done, you know, all residential. We've done all commercial. We've done all mixed use. And just interesting thing when Jing and you know, I'm talking about this slide, I realized that almost every one of these projects has, you know, been conceived, developed, built, delivered, and you know, in the time that we've been working at the Takoma Junction project. So we thought that was something as a company that we found, you know, pretty interesting and noteworthy. Next slide, please. Here's our pipeline projects. These are projects that are coming up, and, you know, a couple of notable things there. Our project size has gotten much bigger. I mean, as we've had success in delivering projects, we've been trusted by governments, by financial backers, others, to develop much larger projects than the one we are working on Takoma Junction. So we still are very excited about the Takoma Junction project, but we wanted to give you a demonstration of the confidence that others have had with us. The second, that's the two on the left, are our public-private partnerships. The one on the right, Park Place and Addison Road, in Prince George's County, is somewhat public in that it's near Metro Station. So again, I think it demonstrates our overall commitment to working in public-private partnerships, you know, knowing what the policy objectives are of government and working to make those possible with the realities of the marketplace. Next project, please. Next slide, please. So why, besides what I've shown you, why NDC? Next slide, please. Many reasons, and I think these apply to Takoma Park, but they really apply to all the projects that we do. I mean, we are a mission-driven developer. We are, you know, We make economically viable projects, but we also, almost every project I've shown you, everyone I could take you to, has a mission purpose beyond just the bottom line, and has really changed communities for the better. We know the value of community partnerships. We've worked with all kinds of communities. We've worked with high-income communities, low-income communities, communities of color, communities with, not that much color, all types at all levels, from the lowest level governments to the top. And we value those not because we have to do that, but because we honestly believe it makes our projects better. As I said before, we have a long track record of successfully partnering with local government officials and communities to create really innovative projects. I mean, it's really the interesting projects are what drives us. It's one of our core concepts as a company is we want to do projects that excite us. Certainly the Takoma Junction project is innovative and excites us. We have a very talented development team, and folks like Jing Jing, who is championed this project. Other people who have worked on it. I mean, I don't want to be immodest, but I mean, I think the talent that our team brings to the project is really something that the city of Takoma Park should be very excited about. And not just talent, but the dedication, the hard work, the integrity. It's very special, and I'm very proud of the work that that our people do. As I said before, we have extensive development experience in almost every major asset category and income range across the area. And again, not to brag, but we won numerous awards. Awards for design quality, awards for community impact, awards for just being there and doing the right thing. So we are very proud about our track record and who we are and what we bring to the city of Takoma Park and to this project. Next slide, please. So our vision for Takoma Junction. Next slide, please. So really, and Samira, you really stole a lot of my thunder. So my hat's off to you. You really talked about, stepping back from the details and setbacks and bike lanes and laybys and bioretention, all the technical things that we are happy to discuss. It really is about revitalization. And so we always have to remember that what we're talking about is a surface parking lot, old, rutted, impervious, and a auto, clinic. My hat's off to Johnny. He's been a successful businessman. But really, we're talking about something that is not something that I think is, in the highest and best use and the best interest of Takoma Junction. And we want to turn it into, a first class, not a Bethesda, not a inappropriate, but a first class project that meets the goals of revitalization that Samira, I think, really well laid out in her presentation. And the second thing is about sustainability. A surface parking lot is not a model of sustainability. And so we want to, take what's there, use the most modern techniques we can, use of all of our thinking, push the envelope, and really make this a model of sustainability that the citizens of Takoma Park can be proud of. Next slide, please. We look back and really, like I say, there's a lot of details here of Takoma Junction. We looked at the Takoma Junction Task Force and a lot of other things, and the many kind of outreach sessions we had with many of you before the city council approved a project, looked at it, and really, it falls into a lot of buckets, traffic improvements, access parking, pedestrian streetscape improvement. We do all of that, but really, and again, Samira, I think, said it much better than I will, it's about revitalization. We want to provide new places for residents to visit, eat at, to shop, to gather, but we want to bring new customers and energy to the junction. I mean, to support, and let me underline that, to support the current businesses. I think that the junction, has a great collection of local businesses, but it is, and it is not the kind of active place that brings the energy, that current businesses need. They're doing a great job. They got great services, but I think they need more. They need the catalyst. And we believe that the Takoma Junction project that we are proposing in partnership with the city will bring that energy and will rise up the current businesses. And finally, it's a matter of, fiscal dollars and cents. Takoma Park has a very small tax base. No one wants their taxes raised. And so how do you increase that tax base? You bring, property that is laying fallow into productive use, and you bring, new customers to existing businesses so that they prosper as well. So really, our mission is revitalization while doing the other things we, talked about: traffic improvement, parking, pedestrian, all those other things that'll make great development. Those things all go hand in hand if you do them with skill. And we believe that we will do them with skill. Next slide, please. So, how do we do that? And again, we'll get into a lot more detail in the breakout sessions and in the council work sessions, but really saw sort of three things that, that we thought were important, that we saw as themes in this project to really make it work. New trends for construction. So one of the things we really are looking at bringing in is using technology called mass timber, which has sustainability, has aesthetic design, is lightweight, strong, it's more cost and time efficient. This is a technology that is used much more on the West Coast. There's very few examples on the East Coast. We want to bring that here. And if we're able to do that, we can really make this a showcase, really make it an example that, will bring excitement and attention and a positive image to this project. And by reflection, Takoma Park, we're very excited about this technology. We're going to work hard to bring it to the site. Next slide, please. The next is retail tenants, because that's really what we're all about. I mean, we're going to sit here and discuss and debate like a building, but the building is really only a home for the types of tenants that you bring. And that's why the city, I assume, wanted to have this project done, not to just have some kind of edifice there, but to, bring businesses that will, enhance the city. So, we are looking at lots of potential retail tenants. The city pushed us very hard, and we agreed that we will not have any chain stores. We will not have big box stores, that this is a development that will have retail tenants that reflect the spirit of Takoma Park. So they'll have to be local and community oriented, arts related, sporting goods, shops, cafes, a full service restaurant, a bookstore perhaps. We haven't identified them because frankly, this process has taken so long. There have been, it's hard to attract tenants when you can't tell them, when are you going to break ground? When are you going to move in? They want to know that. But, as Samira talked about, there are folks out there who want to be here, and we're very excited. And we're going to bring an outstanding mix that is different than anything, in a typical commercial development, and we think reflects the junction and reflects Takoma Park. Next slide, please. These are just, these are images. They talk about kind of what our vision is, and we use these a lot. But I mean, we want to have places that reflect Takoma Park. So no, it's not going to be like Bethesda fancy or downtown fancy, but it is going to be nice. I mean, we want to do a quality development. We want to bring something really nice to Takoma Park. So we think we can hit that sweet spot of having, cafes, restaurants, things like that, that have a wow feature, but are reflective of the values of Takoma Park. And so that's what we're shooting for. We think there's lots of people out there who want that, who want to be here, and that's who we're going after. Next slide, please. So the other thing it's, as a development, as many of you know, it's designed to be, retail on the bottom floor, office on the second floor. We think that's a great mix. We think there's a need there. Samira talked about nonprofits that want to come. We're very excited about them as a possibility. But another thing we're looking at potentially is a community co-working space. And we like to do in our company, we have sort of searched around for presidents for ideas. These come from a friend of mine, Jim, out in California. He's created a community co-working space called Craft Work that really combines kind of the things sort of the practical things you see in a place, like a co-working space, but with a community basis, community flair. It really is, if I can use this term, a co-op for co-working that I think would work very well. So we're interested in finding potential nonprofit tenants, but we also are very excited about this concept. We think it would work great. We think there's a need for it, and I think it does respond to the post COVID environment, we see a future where people are working from home, but they also want to get out every once in a while, and they don't want to just sort of stay at home, 5 days a week, and they don't want to commute downtown. So we think that the Junction is a perfect place that would attract and be a home, a community space where people can gather and do all these things. And again, sort of the spirit of the Takoma Junction task force of community gathering space. And so this is our take on it. We're very excited, and we hope to, if we do not find a sort of dedicated tenant, to do something like this. Next slide, please. All right, I will now turn it over to Jingjing Liu.
All right. Thank you, Adrian. So over the past years, we have some important milestones happened. On February 2012, the Takoma Junction Force Report was issued, and on January 2014, the city released a request for proposals to redevelop the city-owned parking lot. On April 2015, NDC is very honored to be selected as a developer to partner with the city for this redevelopment. And then start from July 2016 to March 2017, we started the community consultation process to collect the feedbacks from the communities regarding the design, the programs, and the concept design was approved by the City Council in October 2017. And then the combined site plan was approved in July 2018, and then the ground lease was started in September 2018. In the following months, NDC and co-op executed the cooperating agreement and a parking lot sublease agreement. So on February 2019, the combined site plan was accepted by the county, and in the following months, NDC provided the updates to the City Council for what has been changed since 2018. So now let's talk more in detail about what we've been working on since the last time we presented to the City Council. So we attended 3 rounds of the HPC preliminary consultation hearings from May to October 2019. Based on the HPC feedbacks, the left side of the second floor was changed to read as 1 story. The building height was reduced by 2 feet, and the parapet wall was significantly lowered. The central volume just pushed back by about 2 feet from the front facade. And then with all of those changes, we resubmitted the combined site plan to the Montgomery County for review on July and November last year, and then made our final resubmission in January this year. So based on the county reviewers' feedback, a 6-foot backlane was added per the along the side frontage, and the landscaping and the sidewalk areas were rearranged to provide safer and larger public spaces. And the rear facade design was detailed designed. So I will talk more in detail when we talk about the updated plan. But before we jump to what changes, I would like to first talk about what has not been changed. So first is our overriding goal always remains the same: to deliver a project that is community-oriented and brings ecological and economic character of Takoma Park. The project will support local businesses of all types, provide more options for people to shop locally, and bring new customers to the junction and to benefit the existing and future business. The project will satisfy the requirements for LEED Gold certification and will seek to different ways to enhance the environment. And stormwater management is designed to exceed the city's requirement. We will also provide a 140-foot lay-by lane and a 10-foot service corridor between the proposed building and the co-op building. And the adequacy of the lay-by lane to meet the co-op's loading requirements has been confirmed by the co-op. We also value the importance of public space to a community, so the amount of public space area approved has been improved and larger. So we also reserve spaces for future public arts installation and we will work with the city and the community in the later phase. And the forest conservation plan still remains in place. So here is the garage plan. The traffic flow pattern was updated to have a better circulation. And the garage has 3 ADA parking spaces, 7 motorcycle circle parking spaces, 4 car share spaces, and 15 standard parking spaces. And then here is the first floor plan. So based on the HPC feedback, the central volume has been pushed by about 2 feet from the front facade. So the volume steps back sequentially. And the stair lobby has been pushed back to in line with the storefront to have larger public space. So the total square footage for the ground floor is about 19,500 square feet. So we propose a 5,000 square feet restaurant on the left side and about 3,700 square feet cafe area on the right side. And in the middle part, we propose about 10,000 square feet retail spaces. So here are some changes for the front landscape. We shift the labeling behind the existing stop line, so it met the existing condition. And a 6 feet backlane was added per master plan. The bus station was relocated to the north side of the plan, and a bus shelter was added here. A standard 6 feet free and clear sidewalk next to the public right-of-way was provided per ADA requirements. We also added several tree pits per the soil volume and tree planting requirements. And now, so the public spaces, the area circled by the green dash line is about 3,850 square feet. So to help better understand how the pedestrian walk pattern works, here is a bird view of the building renderings. So here is a 6 feet free and clear sidewalk, and it is our proposed primary sidewalk. So there is a curb here, so people will walk from here to have the opportunities enter to the public space area from here, here, and here. And here is our second floor plan. The per HPC requirements, the left side of the second floor was pushed by 23 feet to allow the building read as 1 story. So a roof deck was created here. We also add a balcony in the rear to have more outdoor space for office tenants. So the total office square footage is about 18,700 square feet. And here is a roof floor plan. The roof deck was removed, and right now the roof is only accessible for maintenance. And here are the 2 spaces for green roof areas, and the rest of the areas are reserved for mechanical system. For the building facade, the elevation has been adjusted to simplify the volume expression and balance the notions of the separate buildings. The new elevations include a volume like next to the closely matching the proportion of the co-op building, matching its height. The building height again has been reduced by 2 feet. The storefront has been adjusted to reflect a more compatible design to Takoma Park's catalog of ground floor retail. The parapet and canopy has been lowered to reflect the other local canopy expressions. And in the rear facade, we have continued the cornice across and are utilized the scalpers to help break up the rear elevations. So lastly, regarding where we are going. So we hope to get approval of the combined site plan by the City Council and the Montgomery County Planning Board in May this year. And with all of this approval, we anticipate to receive the site plan certified on September this year and get the approval of the historic area work permit on October. And then by June next year, we anticipate to receive the building permit. And then in the following months, we start construction. With a 16 months construction period, we anticipate to finish construction on October 2023, and then let the tenant move in January 2024. All right. Thank you for being here today, and I really appreciate that you took your time to be here and listen to our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jingjing. I think next up is Elza Heisel-McCoy from Montgomery County.
Thanks, Roz, and I'm sorry, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So thanks, Roz, and thanks to Mayor Stewart and the City Council for inviting me here tonight to talk about the development review process. I will do my best to keep it simple and brief. There are a lot of moving parts, but the process is sort of a consultative and iterative process. So developers come to the planning department, present their designs, get feedback in the initial stages, and then modify the project and sort of repeat until everything is sort of just right. The applications are reviewed by a number of agencies against their own standards. So for transportation, you have the County Department of Transportation, the Department of Permitting Services right-of-way group does their separate review, and for projects that front on state roads, the State Highway Administration does their review. The Department of Permitting Services for projects outside of Takoma Park reviews stormwater. Everywhere they review fire and rescue access. They review zoning. And then for housing projects, the Department of Housing and Community Affairs will do their review. For projects that are in municipalities like the City of Takoma Park, the city staff also plays a role. For projects in historic districts. The Historic Preservation Commission will conduct a review. And then, of course, the development review process is all open and public. And so we work with residents, interested parties in every community for every development application that we receive. Developers are required to provide notice that an application has been submitted. All the application materials are on our development review website, and we welcome interested folks to reach out to us early and often to share their thoughts and concerns or support of the project. At the planning department, we have three particular sort of standards that we review applications against. There are the subdivision regulations in Chapter 50, the County Forest Conservation Law in Chapter 22A, and then the zoning code in Chapter 59. The review process ends, our development review process ends at the planning board, and then moves to the Department of Permitting Services and the Historic Preservation Commission or the city for the building permit end of things. The rules for subdivision, Chapter 50, establish a process for the review of subdivision applications, different types of review, establish standards, and set findings that the planning board must make in order to approve development. And what I'm going to do for each of these three is just very briefly give you an idea of the kinds of things that we're looking at. So for subdivision, there's a finding that the lot design, that the size, width, shape, and orientation are appropriate to the use that is being proposed. That the application conforms to the recommendation of the relevant master or sector plan, that public facilities are adequate to serve the site. This is typically an analysis of traffic and schools, and that forest conservation requirements and stormwater requirements are being met. Chapter 22A, the Forest Conservation Law, sets limits on and provides direction on tree clearing and mitigation requirements for impacts to forest on site. And then there are also special requirements for certain high priority trees that are a high priority for protection. There's a separate variance that the planning board has to grant. This is typically done in conjunction with the preliminary plan review. And then the zoning code of chapter 59 establishes process. It establishes for each of the zones in the county the development standards, the building height, the lot coverage, the setbacks, the density, all of those details. It goes through and establishes what uses are allowed in what zones and under what conditions. And then it also requires that the planning board make certain findings in order to approve applications. So the planning board has to find that the application meets the relevant development standards, that the stormwater and forest conservation requirements have been met, that the design is overall safe and well integrated, which is sort of a catch-all for good design. It used to be adequate, safe, and efficient, and it became safe and well integrated. The board needs to find that the proposed development is consistent with the recommendations of the master plan, and then generally compatible with the surrounding development. The process for the Takoma Junction review has been longer than a typical review. A typical review for a preliminary plan or a site plan is about 120 days. And we've obviously gone over that on this one, but we've been working with the applicant and Roz and her staff and all of the reviewing agencies to get all the issues that Adrian and Jingjing mentioned addressed. And where we are right now, so there's still we're still waiting on the State Highway Administration to complete their review. But with that caveat, I think from staff's perspective, the applications meet all of the development standards in the zoning code. It meets the requirements of the subdivision rules. Public facilities are adequate to serve the proposed development. In going back through, the master plan, the 2000 master plan identified the Takoma Junction site as a priority development site 20 years ago. It is in some ways a large site, but it's also a quite small site, and there's only sort of so much that it can do. We think that the design that NDC has developed with all of the folks contributing and providing guidance meets the low scale, small town feel of the recommendation of the sector plan, and that the enhancements to the pedestrian experience and the bicycle access and transit access to the site will all contribute to the project being successful. So That is, that's the summary of the process that we undertake for every project. We have heard from a number of residents over the last year or two, and as Mayor Stewart mentioned, I think we are looking to take this to the board towards the end of May. There's a review process, and all of the reports are posted online at least 10 days before the planning board hearing. So we are looking forward to getting State Highways comments and completing our review for that late May timeframe.
Great. Elza, thank you so much for that. That very multi-layered description of Montgomery's planning's process, which is not self-evident to lay people or other professionals. I'm Rosalind Grigsby. I'm Community Development Manager for the City of Takoma Park. I'm batting cleanup tonight. So a number of things that I would have gone into more detail, I think my colleagues have already covered. Following Elza is nice because he clearly identifies the Montgomery County development review process. And I get a chance to talk about the city staff's role. So staff plays a role in the county process, but in this particular project, because it's city owned especially, City Council has identified a number of elements that are either outside the county development review process, but City Council identified as important, or asking for more than the county process does. And so I wanted a chance to walk through what City Council has flagged and how we're looking at that. And I'm going to share my screen here. So staff developed two documents. The first is the one you see in front of you, I hope, the Takoma Junction requirements outside of the county development review process. We use two documents to guide our work. One is the Resolution 2018-41, when Council approved Neighborhood Development Company to move forward through the county development review process. And the other is the development agreement signed between the city and Neighborhood Development Company in 2016. So staff, a combined group of staff members from several different departments, I think there were 12 of us altogether, weighed in with our own areas of expertise on these two documents. This is the first, specific to council. These are topics named in the resolution, not part of the development review proposal. They're not part of the city's or county's review of NDC's project now for various reasons. Some are issues that come later in the process. Some are issues where council really flagged for themselves and city staff elements that they need to look at. So I'm just going to quickly run through this. This is in the council agenda packet for tonight's meeting, so you can look at this on your own again. The first is the identification of B.Y. Morrison Park for revitalization that was named in the resolution. And the work would need to be done in conjunction with SHA, and we do not yet have a timeframe for that. There are minor improvements that can happen now. There's even public art that's happened in the last 6 months there. The second is the process and role for the tree commission in the project. Ordinarily, the tree commission's role is related to tree protection or tree removal permits to evaluate an appeal of those permits. Because this is city property, there isn't an appeal process. The city did require NDC to make a presentation to the tree commission, and the tree commission sent comments to the city manager to inform the project itself. The question of ownership of multiple lots with the addition of Takoma Auto Clinic's property into the project, and the city owns the parking lot and the green space behind. There's a recognition that in order to move forward and for Montgomery County to grant building permits, it needs to be replatted, and we need to determine ownership of that whole. And the city is currently working with the city attorney on the best options to make this happen. This step in the redevelopment process comes later. The property is platted shortly before permits. I think on Jing Jing's chart, it was something like March 2022. Construction impacts. The council flagged this with concern about the impact on the area businesses and residents. They're very aware of the continuity of operations. This level of construction detail comes later in the process, not at development review, but really with permitting and staging. The city will develop a written agreement with Neighborhood Development Company to lay out the details at the appropriate time. The City Council flagged the Affordable Housing Fund to take funds from this project and expand the housing fund. And the council passed Ordinance 2018-47, dedicating revenues from the Takoma Junction ground lease, which the city has with Neighborhood Development Company, to have funds go into the city's affordable housing reserve. And that was adopted in December 2018. And the last one is traffic and safety issues. And that really addresses questions and various ideas over the years of reconfiguring the intersection. And the city continues to advocate with SHA on measures to improve the intersection. That, of course, is beyond the scope of this project. The second document that the city staff put together to assist council's deliberative process is a spreadsheet. This is also in the agenda packet for tonight's meeting, and it's posted on the city website. And we set up, very specifically, we took provisions named in the resolution 2018-41 and in the development agreement, specific things council flagged that they wanted to look at. The way the spreadsheet is laid out, I will just go through it quickly. We have a column of the topic, the source, either the development agreement or the resolution, the language that was used in that source document, how NDC responded to it, a column of submission documents where they're available. These are documents that take a viewer to the county development review document page. We wanted very much to avoid the confusion of who had the latest documents and where to find them. So we're all relying on the county development review document page to look at where we are. So we hoped that this spreadsheet would direct people in a little more direct way to find what they're looking for. And then the final column is city staff's sense of how this all fits together. Generally, council's comments fall in three categories. The first is straightforward actions that council asked NDC to do, and they're done. So the first one on the list, these are just alphabetical. The document is a Google sheet on the website, so you can sort and search as you choose to. But the dumpster corral, the council asked for specific amenities as part of that. NDC put them in. We've got the document that takes you to see that. It's done. The second category of provisions that council looked at must be reviewed in the context of the whole project and the trade-offs required. Some provisions may even be in conflict with other things that council requested. So for instance, council asked the forest conservation easement in the green space. And they asked that NDC look at the possibility of putting in paths or benches. And because it's a category 1 forest conservation easement, that's not allowed by the county provisions. So the council asked NDC to explore it, and the answer came back with, you can't have those amenities, you can't have any built or installed things in a Category 1 conservation easement. I'll walk you through the second one, the east elevator, because I know this came up as a question, and because I have open, can you see the architectural drawings here on the screen? The link takes you to the document itself, and you can see that on the left side is the elevator as it was planned in 2018 when NDC submitted this to the City Council. And on the right side, which I can't see because it's blocked by participants in this meeting, this is on the east side of the project. There is a second elevator installed. So you can see on the plans that NDC met that request from council. So I'm going to just, and the third category of things that council requested were provisions that require council's determination of sufficiency. So an example is that council asked for stormwater management that significantly exceeds the requirements. And that's a determination council needs to make if they think that what NDC has put together and has in front of them meets what they had in mind. So just to quickly go through this chart, you can see we have, I think, 20 or 22 items called out either in the resolution or the development agreement: dumpster, elevator, energy neutral building, forest conservation, I mentioned a little bit already, green construction methods. The height, as Jing said, the height has been reduced by 2 feet. Council also asked that the parapet be reduced, and it has been reduced, and the roof no longer has, it's now only for maintenance type things that doesn't have people on it for other activities. Sometimes on this list, things are duplicated because council may have mentioned it more than once in more than one document or more than one place in a document. So we wanted to grab the specific language council used so you can see it and then how it's been addressed. So there does seem to be some redundancy in this. Improved mobility and enhanced streetscape. Leasing, it's important to call out that the leasing happens at a later stage in the process. Until they have approval for a building, it's not reasonable to have tenants signing up. So that comes at a later time. The LEED resolutions asked for gold or higher. LEED gold is now standard in Montgomery County. NDC, it's important to note, has enlisted a third-party consultant to work through the LEED requirements and scorecard. So they're paying attention to that. And the specifics, the LEED specifics about the build out will be finalized when the tenants are identified and the plans for each commercial space are finalized. So again, some of this happens at a later date. The parking question is important. What council requested was that it be available to other businesses in the area, not only to tenants of the project. And the project includes public parking. And we know that customers in this commercial district currently use multimodal transportation options. So NDC is asking for a waiver on the parking of a small portion of the spots. We know also that this area has the Takoma Park Silver Spring Commercial Revitalization Overlay Zone, which allows for the parking waiver in order to encourage more pedestrian and alternative transportation options in a neighborhood development. So this is intended to be a neighborhood scale development, and finding the sweet spot of the right amount of parking is part of that. And again, this is one of those items that's that council will need to determine sufficiency on this. The public space Jing's talked about, council requested at least 2,700 square feet, and they requested that it work as public space. And as Jingjing mentioned, they've designed to be 3,800 square feet. And again, the links are here. You can check yourself and see. It's important to note that NDC did work with the Takoma Junction Community Consultation Process Advisory Committee. It's kind of a mouthful that we never managed to get a shortened form for the name. That was a council appointed committee intended to help NDC get community input on key design elements. And they did that and folded the findings of that into their work that you see before you now. And then just a couple more. We've got questions of the rear facade. Council specifically asked for window openings and more light. And they also specifically asked for buffers for the neighbors behind the building. They asked for more detail in the design. So that's a sufficiency question. Council will need to look at that and see if that makes sense to them. The service corridor, they asked for a 10 feet width. They got it. It's in the plans. You can see it. The stormwater, as I mentioned, actually comes at a later date. NDC must submit the site plan and final plan. When the final decisions are made, they come back to the city, and the city will require a system analysis of the capacity of the existing downstream stormwater infrastructure to determine the impact of receiving the stormwater generated by the project. It's important to remember that as a impermeable asphalt parking lot, that all that water now is dumping into the city's stormwater system. And finally, the last item on the list is the questions about cooperation between the co-op and neighborhood development company. And council was concerned about parking and loading for the co-op. NDC does have 140-foot lay-by for deliveries, and the co-op and NDC signed an agreement in 2018 addressing their parking needs. So that's kind of an abbreviated form. As I said, the documents are available online. Let me stop sharing. And the next part of the meeting is that we will move into breakout rooms. We have 3 topics identified: parking, public space, and sustainability. We have 2 sessions, so you can choose to go to any 2 of the 3. They will be 20 minutes each. And participants will choose your breakout sessions. So the city staff is going to work their Zoom magic to make that available, and you can pick and you will find yourself transported into the breakout room. It's important to note that we have city staff, county staff, and NDC consultants in these breakout rooms to answer questions. And so we want to take as much advantage as we can of their expertise to get clarity for residents and council members in this process. So with that, Jesse, do I turn it over to you to lead us into the breakout rooms?
Yes, I thought the city manager was going to speak, but if not, I can open the breakout rooms. Breakout.
No one's breaking up tonight.
Breakout rooms. I'll open the rooms now, and you can. Everyone can select their rooms.
Asked for the first 3 The hands that are raised in the order that you hit the little button. And again, if there is anyone on the phone who has joined the parking group, please hit *9 to raise your hand, and please hit *6 to unmute yourself. And to get started, I am going to start with Andrew Strungen, Tracy Duvall, and then Elias Blanton. And I'm going to ask you to unmute, Andrew.
All right, thank you very much for the opportunity to ask this question. I appreciate that the experts are here. I'm having a hard time reconciling the need for experts when what we know is that there is a request for a waiver so that NDC will not have the required number of spaces for its own use, much less for the use of adjacent businesses or the co-op. We also know there's not going to be any parking allowed on Columbia Avenue because of the fire lane access issue. There's already limited parking on the other streets nearby. So what's the plan? Because it turns out people still have cars.
Glenn, I'll let you start.
Paul, do you know? I mean, we really haven't been involved in a lot of detail in the parking analysis that's been done for the site. I think the previous, in the presentation, it talked about 77 parking spaces, I believe. And the remainder of the people that can't park in there would then have to look to on-street parking that's available in the area to get there. But the limitations of the building would restrict us to the 77 parking spaces that are shown on the plan.
So maybe I can chime in.
Okay.
Yes, please, Elsa.
Sure. So in the 2000 Takoma Park master plan, for the commercial centers in the city, the master plan recommended the Takoma Park East Silver Spring Commercial Revitalization Overlay Zone, which had several functions, but two main ones. One was to address additional land uses that would be allowed by right. And then the second was to provide additional flexibility for developments that are to basically provide fewer parking spaces than the zoning code would require. In this case, the applicant NDC is requesting that the planning board waive 15 parking spaces. So I think that's 78 cars instead of 93 cars. Andrew's absolutely right that people still do have cars, but I think at the same time, there are a lot of people that walk or use bikes or use transit to access the junction. The development is going to enhance the streetscape. They're going to build the 8-foot bike lane along the frontage on Carroll Avenue, and they're going to provide a shelter for the bus station. The Takoma Junction site has been a development priority for the city and the county since 2000. It was identified as such, and the site is a limited size site, and it is only going to be able to accommodate so many parking spaces in a development of this density. So, and then also there is there's a certain amount of commercial parking on Carroll and on Grant. And then for folks that are using the co-op, obviously the co-op has their own parking lot. So from the staff perspective, the goal and the recommendation of the 2000 master plan for a commercial redevelopment of this site, and the focus on promoting non-auto access to the site, and the size of the development in staff's estimation, meet the recommendations, meet the standards for applying for granting a waiver of those 15 spaces.
Thanks, Elsa. I'm going to move to the next question and ask Tracy to unmute.
The question is not what about those 15 spaces. The question is about what about the 55 spaces in the current lot that aren't accounted for in NDC's waiver. NDC's waiver is for the amount of parking needed solely for their development. The current lot gets filled up, even during the pandemic. So there are 55 folks at a time apparently going to local businesses who will no longer be able to park where they do currently. Are they going to just stop coming? Stop driving and just walk because now the parking lot's like that? Or are they going to park on our neighborhood streets? It's not a small number, it's 55. By the way, that 78 spaces only includes 59 spaces for regular cars. It has ridiculously seven for motorcycles, and it's got 4 for car share, which is for trips that start at the junction, not ones that go to the junction. So it's really 59 spaces to meet a demand of 93 by their own analysis. At any rate, we fear that the existing businesses will suffer and our local streets will suffer because of people hunting for parking.
I want to take a moment to also let everyone know that on the Takoma Park website, under the Takoma Junction link, just today, there's a new open link for the public comments. So if we don't get to hands and we don't get to questions or statements, I really do want you guys to go over to that link and make sure you drop it in there. And it's right on the Takoma Junction site. Our IT director just listed that today. Elsa or Glenn, did either one of you wanted to respond to the conversation about the reduced spaces, not including the 55 co-op spaces?
So the development standards in the zoning code, which is the standard that we're applying here, is based on the proposed use. And so, so that's the standard. So the existing spaces do not need to be considered in that.
I am going to move to our next hand. And that is, I'm asking Jessica Land. Oh, sorry, I can't read the last name all the way through, but I'm asking you to unmute.
Thank you, Jessica Landman. Thank you, Samira.
Yep.
I'm going to home in on the specific question that we haven't gotten an answer to yet with respect to the 55 spaces that are being required for this development. The city's resolution calls for making public parking available to the other businesses under this building in those 55 spaces. This is a question for the developer. How many of the spaces that are under this building is the developer planning to reserve or make available for the use of other people besides the tenants of the building? Because that is part not of your responsibility, Elsa Heisel-McCoy, but of the agreement or the requirements that the city council set out in the resolution. That's part one of my question. The second part of my question is for Mr. Cook. You said in the justification submitted to Elsa's team for why it was okay to have the parking space waiver, that cars would not park on surrounding streets because the street's steepness and lack of convenience to enter the building would make sure that they didn't do so. And there was no data to support that. So I'm asking you, Mr. Cook, on what do you base that assertion? Thank you.
One of the things about this particular property, one is we deal with, the availability of transit and the enhancement for the pedestrians and for bikes, that the normal number of parking spaces that would be used for a project like this, if it was sitting somewhere else, is going to be less than what's really needed. We don't really have an exact number that would be, placed into the garage from the existing lot once it's built, other than that the provision is there to do that. I am not aware of any formal agreement. I don't know what the numbers are in any formal agreement, if there is one, between the city and the NDC. But there are other areas where there is on-street parking that's available. So we don't have an exact number in an area like this to try to define, what that would be.
I'd also like
Oh.
to add that it's a part of the resolution, as you mentioned. And Roz's presentation, Roz Grigsby, our planning director, her presentation listed a document that is the document that the planning staff is tracking our council resolution compared to the changes that have or have not been made by NDC, our development partner. So what I will say is there is detail, there are numbers in that document, and that document is also on that same on the same website. Elsa, did you have anything in addition to that?
Samira, can you hear me?
Hi, Adrian. How are you?
Hi. I'm sorry. The first part of the question was addressed to me, so I wanted to make sure to address it. Just from a technical point of view, the city asked us to allow parking for everyone for both the Takoma Junction project as well as surrounding businesses. The lot is open to everyone. There is not an assigned, this is for you, this is, for someone else. We thought that was inefficient. So from a technical point of view, that's the answer to that question. But I would like to expand and say that, our development looks to the future. And I've been doing this for 30 years. And every project I've seen, not just our own project, but others, there's been concern about enough parking. And what I've seen is that the demands for parking have gone down and down and down. And I look back on projects that I did or that other people did that, said it needed parking, and the parking is underutilized. People bike more, they use public transit more, they use car sharing more. They have, we have a very pedestrian, very bike-friendly development. And so we would not be developing this project if we thought there was going to be inadequate parking. We do not see a situation where the parking lot's going to be jammed and people are not going to be able to get in. It is our professional development that this is the right amount of parking for the site. And, we wouldn't go forward if we didn't think that.
Thank you, Adrian. I'm going to move to the next question and ask Stephen Kern to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hey, thanks so much. I'm afraid I still haven't heard the answer to the question, so let me just ask it again. Adrian, how many spots do you plan to leave open to anyone in the public and not to your tenants? And I'd also like to make sure, before we wrap this up, if you can make sure to call on Catherine Rourke, who I think is the only person in this breakout room who is a business owner in the Junction. She's the owner of Spring Mill Bakery. So Adrian, what guarantee do we have that you will not give parking spaces to, say, a company, a restaurant who's going to pay $250,000 a year in rent and are going to say, hey, we want 20 or 30 spaces if we're paying that much money and we want them for us? That's my question.
Okay. the guarantee is the agreement that we, that we signed with the city to allow public access. So we're bound by that agreement. So I invite you to look at that, and it's right there in black and white.
I will next move to unmute Sally Kern. And Sally, you can feel free to offer your time and space to Catherine.
Well, why don't you, can you hear me?
Yep, we sure can.
Why don't you call on Catherine and then call on me?
There are
Okay.
7 people. There are 6 people ahead of Catherine.
Okay, my suggestion is you let Catherine go and then keep us in the order that you kept us.
We will need 6 people to agree to that. So Richard Wiley, can I see, are you okay with that? Susan Huffman, hands up. Roger Allen, Cynthia, and Gary Stern. Everyone's okay with that? I don't see any cameras on. Gary Stern? Okay, great. All right, Catherine. By popular demand, I'm asking you to unmute yourself.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you guys for allowing me the opportunity to put my 2 cents in. I have been in business for 28 years and love, love, love the Takoma Park neighborhood. Everyone is fantastic. But in light of what's going on, I'm just a little apprehensive, having experienced my Bethesda location under construction, which is unsettling to businesses. And, we've been in a terrible past year with the pandemic. But when you look at 55 spaces leaving and 55 spaces coming for how many more, square footage of retail, office, I just think that's going to decimate the existing businesses that have come to the Takoma Park area, been supported by the community, support the community. And I just, it makes my knees shake when I think about my customers not having anywhere to park and driving around. And as we all know, with any type of construction, pandemic, people's shopping habits change. And once they change, it's very, very, very difficult to get them back. So, again, I haven't heard the answer as to why, that type of project can have 55 spaces. It's just seems insufficient for the existing new construction versus what this project was set to assist existing businesses and to aid them. I don't see that at all. And, I don't know how that, I'm just giving my 2 cents, but if someone could see how this could assist the people that put their, heart, soul, and livelihood to, to that junction as it is already.
If we, do we have a response from Glenn, Elza, or Adrian? Again, Catherine, I'll just emphasize that the construction is a 16-month process, correct, Adrian?
We hope less, but let's say 16 months.
Okay.
Partly driven by the need to construct the lay-by first, but anyway, go ahead.
I just wanted to point to that because the conversation about the construction and taking away parking during this construction, I wanted to right size that comment within those 16 months. Okay, Catherine, please, we don't hear often from our businesses the same way we hear from our residents. So please do, I will publish this on our Blue Dot business communication platform as well. But please do take this comment specifically around staging during the development process and parking during the development process, so that we can consider that, so that council can have that as part of their considerations as they're moving forward. I'll now ask, I think we're bringing Sally Kern back.
Thank you. I'll get to it. The first part of my question is, I'm concerned about the signalization adjustment that I read about on page 27 of the 323 traffic impact analysis from January. I'm concerned that you're going to suggest to State Highway to remove the all red pedestrian phase that residents use to cross safely, and over 200 school children use as a safe route, direct route to school. I'm concerned that the project does not align with the Vision Zero mindset. So perhaps Glenn Cook could describe the signalization adjustment that he is recommending.
Sure, Sally, I'd be glad to. We are not recommending the elimination of the all red pedestrian crossing phases at the intersection. That was one of the things that was made very clear to us, because the State Highway Administration in their visioning study for this area of Takoma Park was very concerned, which ties into Vision Zero, with pedestrian activity, bicycles and things of that nature. The timing changes that we're recommending will not eliminate, shorten, or lengthen the timing that's allocated exclusively for the ped crossings across the major roadway there. So that will not happen.
Thank you, Glenn. I'm going to ask, we're going to keep pushing and try to get the rest of the folks in here. I'm going to have Richard Wiley ask you to unmute.
Yes, I'm Richard Wiley, the acting fire chief and vice president of Takoma Park Volunteer Fire Department. My biggest concern is we have not been involved in any of this to a certain extent to where we are going to be affected in a tremendous way. One, I haven't seen anything on how far back this property is going. Am I going to lose my parking spaces behind the firehouse that go past Johnny's? And two, if you are going to have limited spaces in that area, then I'm going to have to do something to prevent other people from parking in our parking lot. So to get the access or have them be able to be closer to these businesses that they're participating in. When this firehouse was built, we fought for every parking space that we have behind this firehouse. And not only that, we are also worried about the retaining walls coming down behind the firehouse, because when this firehouse was constructed, it was very, very difficult to get these retaining walls to withstand the pressure of the earth and everything that's coming behind it. So I don't know.
Do we have a really quick answer to Richard's question? We're being phased out in a few seconds.
This is Glenn Cook. I don't have an answer. That's more of a question for the site engineer and the structural people, as far as what's going to happen in the rear of the building and the walls. We're not part of that.
We still have about 20 folks who are unassigned, which means they're having a little bit of a trouble getting into the room. what I will do now, we do have Elza in the room. And let me check and see if Glenn Cook is joining us again.
This is Glenn Cook. I think we're in now.
All right, we're back and we have all of our folks to get started. I'm not going to waste time reiterating the guidelines, but I will call the names in order of hands raised. So let's get started with okay, let's get started with Cynthia, Marielle, and then Elias. I see you're back in the room. Nice to see you again. I will ask Cynthia to unmute her hand. And a quick reminder, guys, let's try to keep it to 1 quick minute and then get an answer from our technical experts.
In the previous parking session, Tracy Duvall was very articulate in reminding us that right now the current public lot is full. That's 55 spaces. So where are those cars going to park? And in reality, the proposed parking garage, which is supposed to service the community, not simply the tenants and shoppers at the new proposed construction, that the number of parking spaces is not in the 70s, it's in the 50s. In addition, the parking, Glenn Cook had indicated that people can be parking on the nearby streets. The reality is that parking on the nearby streets is already used up. It looks differently right now in the time of COVID, but we all know that's temporary. I live on Manor Circle, the most common street parked on by users of the junction. And it is packed. And every time a new business expands, it is packed. But why are we destroying existing businesses by destroying their parking options? And some of the design options are to even take away current spaces, which those junction businesses have repeatedly told the city, you take away our spaces, it takes away our business. In addition, the Montessori school immediately across the street from the proposed junction is going to be doubling, which means more students, more parents dropping off children, more staff. So this isn't just a simple issue. The garage space as proposed is inadequate for the requirements made by the city for this development. So when you take in the large picture parking experts, what do you say to this? You have to talk reality, not just looking at a flat map drawing.
Thank you. Can we move to responses now from Glenn, Elza, and I believe Adrian's in the next, is in the next session.
Elsa, do you have a?
So, there's a balance here between vehicle access to the site, transit access to the site, pedestrian access to the site, and that the master plan that the city and the commission and the council passed in 2000 was to redevelop the site. So starting with this as a priority development site, I think the applicant has done, I think, the best job that they could in providing as much parking as they could. Would everybody like there to be more parking? In a perfect world, maybe, maybe not. But I think there are, in addition to the spots under the site, there is commercial parking on Lee, on Grant, on Carroll, that folks could use without having to go into the neighborhoods. But even then, I mean, so the neighborhoods are public streets, and it is more convenient to, I think it's arguable that it's more convenient to park on Carroll and Grant and Lee in the commercial spots if they're available. If not, perhaps that would encourage more folks to walk.
With all due respect.
Cynthia, Cynthia, I have you dropped. I also have Elza. I'm asking you to unmute again. And Cynthia, I'm coming back to you to ask you to unmute again.
I'm here.
Okay. I just want to get back to Cynthia to make sure. And Cynthia, can you please keep your comments brief? I just asked you to unmute. Thanks.
So again, I don't feel the experts have an accurate picture, because again, the streets that are listed as where people can park does not include Manor Circle, which is the most common street people park on when they're doing on-street parking and going to the junction. In addition, the volunteer fire chief just spoke, but was not able to at the last session, and he asked how will his parking spaces be protected when people will naturally want to park at the fire station.
Elza, I'm going to consider your response. And I'm also going to encourage you, Cynthia, to actually put those statements, like I said, into the gathered space, because I don't want to lose sight of any of that. And I have already messaged our fire chief. I'm moving on to ask Elias to unmute and trying to get as many questions on the record because we are recording.
Sure. Well, I have a comment and a question, but I'll make it quick. I don't have fancy degrees. I'm not an employee, but I know this junction better than most of the people who are making these designs. I have lived in this neighborhood for 30 years. I have driven my children to school through that neighborhood. I have taken my wife to work through that neighborhood. I go there at least 4 times a day. The notion that you're going to abolish those spaces because, well, we want to develop it, and I know we need to do something, we'll give them a waiver additional, is crazy. Do you honestly believe that people are going to take loads of laundry across the street to do business with the dry cleaner? Do you think people are going to be taking boxes to the postal place with a lay-by there and they can't even see where they're going? It's not going to happen. People are going to drive by that intersection and decide to go someplace else. That's what's going to happen. That lot is being used by the co-op and the rest of the junction and the rest of the junction businesses. I've asked the people. I've seen kids walking with their instruments across the street. Their parents are not going to park 2 blocks away to have them walk up to that business. It's just going to affect the businesses and they won't be there in a few years. Now, I do have a question, which was asked at the council at one point and would make a difference to me. And that is there going to be pay parking or free parking? Because if there's pay parking, then everything I say, amplify it 10 times. Nobody's going to park to go drop off laundry. Nobody's going to park to go buy a loaf of bread. Nobody's going to park to run into the co-op. Nobody's going to pay to park to run into the co-op and buy food. Now, if it's free for everybody, then that's a certain discussion. I still would say it's bad, but it's another discussion. With having to pay for parking, frankly, it's ludicrous. And Parks and Planning, you really need to reconsider this thing. Thanks.
Thanks, Elias. I appreciate you keeping under that 2 minutes and getting in a comment and a question. Do we have a response on the at least the paid parking, Glenn?
I don't know. Oops. You're good. Okay. I'm not sure what the future plans are, but isn't the existing parking lot paid parking today?
The co-op actually pays for the space, it rents the space, and the parking is free to co-op parkers. Elias, you're back. I'm gonna ask you again.
Yeah, it's free to everyone. It's free.
Yes.
Yes.
Sure. Everyone parks there, but the co-op pays for it, as in they lease the space. Yes.
Right, and it's free to everyone in the junction. All businesses in the junction use it at no cost, including the co-op. I'll stop.
And what I'll say is thank you for that, because again, this recording and these questions are going to be able to be a part of the considerations for the final vote. I'm going to push really hard now to get to Sue and then Emmanuel. Sue, I'm asking you to unmute. Sue Miller.
Yes, on that same issue, we have been asking for years to know the number of public slots that will be available and what they will cost. And we've been told again and again, we don't know yet, we don't know yet. The city created this development to revitalize the junction. If we take out that parking from those small businesses when they are struggling in the pandemic, and asking them also to live through minimum 18 months of construction, which seems very optimistic to me, with zero parking anywhere. And then we're not even telling them, are you going to get 3 public slots and they'll cost $10 an hour? We have no idea. The city cannot accept this development if they don't know whether or not it's going to harm our local businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. And also thank you for giving time to our next person. I will say Adrian Washington was on the call and made it clear that all of the spots are open and none of them are dedicated to the tenants within the building.
I do want to, Samira, I do want to jump in because I know, was Lorraine in this group or did she leave? Because one of the things we had discussed years ago was also when Historic Tacoma does events, being able to do like parking for them and things like that. That was a concern that had come up and had been prior conversations. So just want to let folks know that Adrian had also talked about that and working with the local businesses, especially ones that if they had events, to help out with the parking. So, and I see Susan shaking her head. Yes, you remember that. Yeah.
I think Samira unmuted me because I just want to follow up. If Adrian just announced in the prior breakout room that none of the spaces are going to be dedicated to tenants, that is completely different from what has been said so far and what is said in all of the documents. So that needs to be publicized, not just in a little breakout room. but I'm having a hard time believing it.
Sue, all of the breakout rooms have been recorded too.
I know, but nobody's going to see them. With everything we've seen so far said that they were going to have spaces dedicated to tenants and some for the public, and the number was never announced. So this is a very different, apparently, statement. And
he made it clear. Elias, you were in there with me last time, but he did make it clear that it was a request from the city council and that he was he was accommodating the request from city council.
And
so
is that posted in the plans somewhere that's accessible?
I don't know, but one, it's recorded here. So yes, it will be posted publicly, but two, I'll make sure we have an answer for that.
But we have no idea what those spaces are going to cost.
Well, within our resolution, again, the one that Roz walked through, it's a full graph that charts every single request and every single response to that request thus far from NDC. So you can also check it there, and it is on the Takoma Junction project page.
I was asking about the cost of the spaces, but I'll cede to the.
I don't have the answer to the cost of the spaces, but definitely the number of the spaces.
So it could be $10 an hour. Thank you.
I'm not gonna leave it there and say that it could be $10 an hour because I don't know the number. But I appreciate your comment, and I get what you're trying to say. I'm going to move to Emmanuel Wagner now and ask to unmute.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you.
All right, thank you so much. Hi, and actually thank you to city staff and county staff and the developer that are here for your unending patience as you address all these different questions. So I want to speak sort of like maybe from a different perspective. I'm a millennial, and I will actually take on the unpopular or crazy opinion, as Elias has called it, that I support reducing parking at this site, because I do like for people at the junction to come there from nearby, not from far away, for it to become a focal point for the community. And so disincentivizing using cars, utilizing our personal vehicles, and all the issues that it is associated with that, like pollution and environmental concerns, kind of do get reduced by reducing parking. So I just want to emphasize that maybe this is not total opposition. There may be some people out there that actually support that concept. And I do want to make just another comment. I would like to support city staff and the council to look at the need to find funding for potential redesigning the junction to simplify that intersection, which would really address a lot of the issues that are being brought up. All these different crossings, the timing of crossings of the intersection, lights, and so forth. A lot of that could be addressed by actually just redesigning the intersection that's right there. So that's just a comment, not a question, but thank you so much for your time and patience.
Thank you for your comment, Emmanuel. I am going to now move to Roger Schlegel and ask you to unmute, Roger.
Hi, two quick yes or no questions. Mainly, I guess they would be for Glenn Cook. The first question has to do with location for drop-offs and pickups, as people are using, ride for hire services. I see in the documents that NDC submitted that the lay-by is for truck loading and unloading only at all times. So where is the street side location where the developer expects people to be dropped off or picked up, perhaps senior citizens or others, people who are trying to be environmentally friendly and taking a car share? And then also, given that the driveway to the parking garage has been determined to be right in, right out only site access, what kinds of calculations have you done about the additional mileage that people will drive on approach and or departure, and what streets they might use for those approaches and departures in order to approach from the west and depart to the east.
Real quickly, the drop-off area just to the west of the lay-by lane can be used for dropping off passengers or picking them up, or they have the alternative of pulling into the garage to pick up people and come back out to do it. They will not be able to use the lay-by lane. The State Highway Administration will not approve that being a constant pickup lane. That's for loading and trash only. The second issue, the access point was changed to a right in, right out due to some site limitations and people having the ability to turn left out of the garage or even turn left, and would just add to the congestion in that area. We've assigned some traffic to, the other local streets, basically making round trips to come back to change direction. They'll be traveling a little bit further to get to where they're going. But either way, as far as emissions and stuff like that are concerned, they would be encountering problems if they were sitting in congestion too.
Okay, thank you. Roger, I see you have your hand. We have about 2 more minutes. I'm going to let you have that follow up. I'm asking you to unmute, Roger, and I'm going to see if we can get Diana Bradley in.
Okay, very quickly. Speaking for the reality-based community, there's a lay-by. Cars will go in there, whether or not there's a rule against it. Trucks will go in there, and if there's a truck in there and the second truck comes in, that truck is going to double park. This is going to have double parked trucks in front of this wonderful new facility when the fire department suddenly gets one of the 20 or 30 alarms they get during a day, and they'll be facing double parked trucks on Carroll Avenue. And yes, there's a rule against parking there, so no one will do it. Has anyone here ever seen a truck park legally? The idea that there's going to be a rule against it, so a truck won't park there. Have you been in front of any business or anyone with a delivery in Takoma Park in the last 20 years?
Roger,
the lay-by will get somebody killed, by the way.
Roger, is that the statement, or do you have any other questions?
That'll do it. I think those are pretty clear statements.
Great, thank you. Diana, I'm going to let you in, but rest assured you have less than 2 minutes. So let's move there.
Okay, I'll follow on with Roger. I am very concerned about the traffic at the intersection. It's dangerous as it's configured now. I think there are a lot of issues with the development and from my point of view. But what I'm noticing about this process is that one thing has to be completed before the next thing can be handled. For example, tenants. Well, we can't ask for tenants until we get the design approved. That has happened in a number of spheres in this conversation, which I think makes for a very, very dangerous decision making because we can't get the whole picture. And I don't know that there's anything we can actually do about it, but it sure mucks up with democracy and representation. It's a very frustrating situation that I'm experiencing around this. It's like,
Diana, the actual tenants will fall into the Economic Development Office. And when I first came on 2 years ago, one of my charges was to identify and work with tenants who are interested. Mm-hmm. And literally throughout that time, businesses are ready to move within a 6-month window. So they have all dropped off. Everyone who was interested they've all dropped off because of the length of the progress of knowing when they're going to be able to move in. So that's been the struggle for staff. And it's also the reason why the answer has been something has to be approved and moving forward before we can actually tell you who the folks
I
are.
understand that, but that's happened also around the trees. It's happened in a number of spheres, and I'm just saying that there's a real issue here being able to take this project in its totality. And there, we ask these pointed questions of concern, and they get just punted to another place because, well, we can't address that now because we have to have this happen first. And then that gets lost. And we're all busy people. I mean, this is what we're up against, and it's the 11th hour, and it's getting more and more challenging, is all I'm saying.
Thank you, Diana. I appreciate that comment because the process is complex and very challenging.
What is that standard? Is it in the, I think earlier on, I think someone said that, but just they didn't say what that standard is. I just out of curiosity, what is the standard that the county, that the council has for stormwater management?
What we have is language from the resolution that Rosalind put up on the screen earlier. It says to substantially exceed the city requirement. The city's requirement, and the city oversees stormwater management permits on behalf of the state, has a guidelines that we use based on state requirements. So we follow the state standards for treatment requirements and capacity requirements. So I think it will be up to the council to decide whether or not NDC's proposal will substantially increase over the required minimum permit requirements. Initially, oh, sorry, go ahead, Susie.
Oh, and sorry, Daryl, I just wanted to clarify that one part of that question was also about, it seems to me that standards are not catching up to the current realities. Like 100-year events are happening every couple of years or even more frequently. And Poplar is flooding and already. And that's only going to get worse. And so one part of that question is, is the standard adequate for the new reality versus the old reality?
Sure, where there is language submitted or that was introduced, and I don't know if it was successful in the state this year, to change the criteria by which the state analyzes storm rainfalls. So there is an identified standard in the state that says what a 2-inch rainfall, 2-year, 1-year, 5-year, 10-year, 25-year, and we're mandated to have those requirements within our stormwater ordinance. So the requirement that the city has is for any development to treat 50% of the runoff for a 1-year storm. If they're redeveloping, that means if it has an existing amount of impervious area that covers at least 40% of the site. That is certainly the case with the NDC proposal. In addition to that, the city requires that for new development beyond what the current impervious area coverage is, they have to treat 100% of the runoff for the 1-year storm. So based on the analysis that NDC has done and what we reviewed in their concept plan, their plan to have the green roof and the bioretention facility in the rear of the building exceeds those minimum requirements. So they exceed, and I believe now, and again, we have not seen this next iteration. We've seen the concept plan, and now NDC is preparing the next round. I believe in their documentation that I've read, same as all of you, they exceed the requirements by 13% over what the city's requirement is. When the city engineer analyzed the concept plan documents that were submitted, and again, this was with a smaller footprint and prior to the county's requirements for fire lanes and other things associated with the building. We also raised potential options for increasing that amount of treatment with permeable pavement and other potential possibilities. So we're anticipating seeing that when they do the next round. For the city, they have a concept plan, and then it's followed by a site design, which again gets more of the details, and then a final plan. Now, they wouldn't submit the site plan and the final plan until the building footprint and all those decisions have been completed because they can't keep chasing changes in design plan. So based on what we've seen so far and what NDC has submitted to the county, they will have no trouble meeting the city's standard The question will be for the council to determine whether or not they are significantly exceeding the requirement for stormwater management. So that answer is not a finite one. It's a judgment call. We do have finite requirements based on the city code and the state authorization we have to issue stormwater permits. So we'll be following those. But that determination of whether the stormwater plans as proposed significantly are greater than what's required is something that the council will have to consider. And, you know, stormwater management, you know, we've all been seeing the impact of climate change and what that means to increasing rainfall and more likely intensity of storms. And so the council in this next budget cycle is evaluating whether or not to create a fund to assist with private property impacts from climate change and the increase in runoff between private properties. Currently, the city's program of stormwater management is focused on public right-of-way and private processes. We try to maintain the system of pipes and inlets that manage the stormwater that goes within the public right-of-way and out to the creeks and streams. And we have a very aggressive program to maintain that infrastructure as well as create new infrastructure. And then on top of that, we have a state mandated requirement of treating 20% of the impervious area in the city with environmental site design requirements. So that stormwater program that the city has oversees all those aspects. So I don't know if that gets to the meat of the question, but that's what I can provide at this point.
Great, thank you, Daryl. All right, next up is Tina Murray. And I also see new hands from Joan Meyer and Tom DiLiberto. So we'll try to get to you, but Tina, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. A comment and a question. First comment is that NDC had already developed a preliminary assessment of the trees and a preliminary plan for tree replacement that they had provided to the county. And it might be helpful, since a number of other questions have come up about the trees, to make those plans a little bit more publicly available. It is helpful to understand and know what the health of that tree stock actually is and what actually is desirable and what we can reasonably see let go in this project. That's my comment. My question is that for the longest time, this area, this plot was sort of a scrapyard and a dump. And many years ago, the asphalt, there were pit tests taken through the asphalt to determine if environmental remediation would be necessary in terms of the waste that was left behind from the dump. That did spill over into the back hill that subsequently wooded over. But that area has never been tested to determine what, if any, environmental remediation and cleanup would be required in order for this project to move forward. I was a part of the tree commission that actually recommended to the city council that this be addressed 3 years ago. They did not follow up with our recommendations. And I have not seen anything since in any plan from NDC as to when exactly this area is going to be tested, but the cleanup necessary is very obvious. So I would invite your perspective on where this is going to fit in your timeline.
So I will firstly just respond to your comments regarding the tree replanting plan. If I understand correctly, so we do have a tree replanting plan submitted to the Montgomery County. It is in the landscape plans called 004. And then in that plan, in that drawing, we specifically like showing what the plans are, what's the trees, what kind of trees we are going to replant in that area. So that information is available online. And regarding the timing for when we are going to do the testing. So once the site plan approved by the Montgomery County Planning Board. We will proceed with our design process. So we are moving forward to the design development phase. So in that phase, we will definitely get more information through the testing.
All right, thank you for your, yep.
Yeah, I was just going to say, my understanding is there'll be soil testing associated with that. There'll be geotechnical testing, both for structural integrity as well as stormwater management. There'll be infiltration testing. So there'll be a lot of geological analysis that will be done on the subsurface of the lot in order for them to determine what the details are needed for the structural integrity as well as the stormwater management for that site.
Great, Tina, thank you for your question. Next up is Rebecca Carter. You have 2 minutes.
Great, thank you. So first I'd like to ask a question or make a request of NDC, which is that you provide illustrations that realistically show what the Columbia side is going to look like for the top 2/3 of it. The top 1/3, there will be no screening from trees by the time you add in the bioretention basin and the fire lane. So to have pictures, illustrations where people can really see that there's going to be nothing there's going to be no buffer between the houses and the building there, and then very minimal for about 2/3 of it way down. So I'd like to make that request. And then my second request is, I hope somebody from the city can just help me wrap my head around how a place that, talks about preserving our environment and saving our environment from destruction is what was on one of the slides that was showed at the start of this, and a resolution that said protect the woods gets us to what is called a forest conservation plan, but to me looks much more like a forest destruction plan that takes out dozens of trees, some of which are big, healthy trees. They're not all trash trees. And I would also like to hear just how realistic you think it is that those 3 giant oaks that have to be a century old that are right along Columbia are going to survive having this building put right onto their roots. I mean, right up in there in ways that you would never allow somebody in the city to do in their backyard. Thank you.
I can just share my screen just to answer. I think I'm not sure whether I can answer all of your questions, but let me share one document very quickly. So here is our replanting plan. So basically, the circle like shows here is the trees we are going to replant in this area. I think our goal is to maximize the trees we can replant in this area, since we still need to leave some room for the trees to grow. So, but regarding this area, the area like near the bioretention area, we cannot plant anything due to the fair housing requirement, since they need a very clear.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I see that the breakout rooms are going to end soon. That's a new illustration. I'm happy to see that. But Daryl, can you answer any of the other questions in the seconds that we have left, please?
We will certainly follow the same evaluation for the tree impact assessment and tree protection plan that we would do in any other construction. A key component when the city arborist reviewed the original concept plan was a change in location of the stormwater access to protect trees. So that was changed and done. So I again don't have any details to point to, but when we review those documents, we will ensure and require them to follow the same guidelines that exist in the city's tree code. And in fact, initial decisions have been made as a result of those requirements.
We have another 20 minutes for this session. And again, this is the sustainability breakout room. As in the previous breakout rooms, we'll ask everyone to limit their question to 2 minutes, and we'll go in the order of raised hands, although we've got a couple participants who were in the earlier session who had questions, and I'll start with them. This evening, I am joined by our Public Works Director, Daryl Braithwaite. She'll have some opening remarks for this breakout session. I am also joined by NDC staff, Jing Jing, as well as Adele Boyle-Denning, who's the architect for the project. I don't see them in here yet, but they should be joining shortly. And with that, I'll turn it over. Daryl, did you want to do some opening remarks?
Yeah, I'll keep my comments very brief in the interest of saving time. The city has seen concept plans for stormwater and trees. We have not been involved in the decisions related to the energy efficiency of the project. Everything we know is what you know based on NDC's submission. The county has certain requirements that they've required of NDC, and NDC has responded in kind. These the issues for tree protection, tree removal, tree replanting, as well as stormwater management will be coming back to the city once the final site plan decisions are made. Based on the initial submission that NDC has in terms of review of the county, they meet or exceed the requirements from the county level. Based on our concept plan review, we did not identify any issues that were would have made it difficult to meet or exceed the city's requirements. So we will be reviewing those documents once final site plan decisions are made, but happy to discuss the process or any specific questions as came up previously.
Great, thank you, Daryl. All right, so we have Vern Kelly here from the previous session, so I'll start with him, and then I'll go to Tom DiLiberto. And then I see more raised hands from Sally Kern first, but we'll start with Vern. Vern, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Can you see me or hear me?
Yeah. We can both see you and hear you.
Okay. Well, my questions are, Daryl, as you know, I think there's only a 24-inch pipe coming from the firehouse. And I do know that the state is trying to increase quantity amounts to the 10-year storm. I want to know if you are aware of that and it can address that. Also, being that there's going to be a re-subdivision of 2 commercial properties, an ALTA survey and a phase 2 site assessment are going to be required. And what is the city prepared to do if we find out that the land cannot support development of this type? So a couple of questions there. 10-year storm support.
Yeah, our stormwater permit requirements focus on a 1-year storm. So they need to meet 50% of the runoff generated by a 1-year storm for the amount of development that equals the existing impervious area on the site as is now. And then 100% of the additional footprint for new impervious area. So they've got those analyses developed for the county review. We reviewed them in the concept plan. They have since changed as site changes have been made. So we'll be reviewing that. The stormwater features include a green roof and a bioretention facility. As they're currently designed, both the green roof and the bioretention facility do not have an infiltration capacity. So what happens is the rain hits the medium, is filtered through the medium, goes to an under drain and connects to the stormwater pipe. So in the event there's toxic materials within the soil that are identified or could be conceivably assumed to become potable with the advent of infiltration, some of the geotechnical work that NDC will be required to do for the next round of stormwater permitting will identify those issues. So they can proceed with the kind of contained system they have now that meets stormwater treatment requirements, or we're hopeful that they will be able to add an infiltration capacity in their stormwater design so that some of that can go to recharge the groundwater if the site is appropriate and infiltration soils are present. Your other question had to do with if there's below ground structural issues related to what was there before. That's really outside of my wheelhouse, but I would imagine that if those conditions are identified, and NDC may speak to that, there'll be an analysis done at what will be required in order to meet structural integrity for the evaluation of what they've got planned. There is significant excavation that's planned as a result of the parking garage. But the structural integrity of the soils will need to be determined and identified before any facility can get constructed. Those are the two parts of your question I heard. Bern, was there anything else?
No, that's good for now. Thank you very much.
And NDC may want to speak to what they do in terms of identifying geotechnical evaluation and what would happen in the event that soils are found to be unsuitable for the structural component that's planned.
Thank you.
Great, Bern, thank you for your question. We'll move to Tom DiLiberto now, and I also see hands from Sally Kern, Steve Smith, Tracy Duvall, and Jeffrey Hopkins. So we'll go in that order, but Tom, you have 2 minutes.
Thanks, Jessica, and thanks to City for everything so far in NDC too. Urban infill from a climate change perspective is probably the best thing a city like Takoma Park can do to fight climate change, and that's been shown by like a whole bunch of different studies from Berkeley to every major sustainability organization and city and research center across the globe. I'm a climate scientist who actively works with urban heat island mapping across the country, including Washington, D.C. And that goes from mapping to also mitigating effects of urban heat islands. So I wanted to ask the NDC folks a little bit more to describe the green roof, or whether there's going to be any sort of cool pavements added in or cool roof sort of materials added into to mitigate any of that. Obviously, it's all better than what's currently there, but I was just curious about any sort of things that might be added to that. And on the flip side, from a data nerd standpoint, I would love there to be a way of having like an actual temperature sensor, an air quality sensor and whatnot on the building, so that we can monitor it in real time and see how things are in that area. Air quality is one thing that's measured very remotely and not really a lot in a lot of cities, and it has a lot of equity implications too. So just curious. Thank you.
So Jing, are you on? Did you want to, I'm not sure which members from your team are in the breakout room this round.
Again, in this room, our civil engineer, Brad, and also the architect are here. So regarding the question is regarding how we design the green roof?
Yeah, green roof or any sort of other things that you might add to reduce heat island sort of implications besides the green roof.
So Alda, is that a question you could answer, or Brad, regarding how to design the green roof?
Well, I know as part of, it's not really my area of expertise, but as part of the LEED process, we're going to have to meet certain solar reflectivity requirements for the roof. I don't think in terms of like pavements or anything, there's not really an active use plan for the rooftop. I think part of that was a consideration of not adding any noise to the exterior. So the rooftop is either going to be green roof or it's going to be mechanical. I mean, I guess one of our strategies was more maximizing the green roof as opposed to any other, I guess, green material.
Great, thank you for your question, Tom, and thanks for the comments from the NDC team. We'll move on to Sally Kern. Sally, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I had a few questions. My town was destroyed. My hometown was destroyed by a flood that was unexpected. The whole town was unprepared, and several people I knew lost their lives. I sent you a bunch of letters to the city, and last year I don't feel as if the 1-inch storm is adequate. From January 1st, 2018 to August 31st, 2020, there were 43 rain events that were greater than a 1-inch storm and 7 events greater than 2.4 inches. I've repeatedly felt that, alerted the city that residents downstream have had sewage in their yard and backflow from the storm water pipes that are overflowing. And there have been some residents who've been threatened after testifying publicly at the county council meetings, that threaten with losing their jobs if they testify again. It's gotten very fraught. I know that Daryl's been working with the residents. I appreciate that. I noticed that there are several people of color in their 80s and 70s who I've been working with who are not on this Zoom meeting. I'm very concerned, and my biggest, one of the many questions I have is, I keep hearing repeatedly that the city's going to greatly exceed the 50% requirement for treatment to a 1-inch storm for redevelopment, but Prince George's County changed their code 2 years ago to requiring developments designated redevelopment to treat 100% rather than a 50% of the 1-inch storm. So repeatedly, Kate has said they're going to treat greater than 50%, but we haven't heard a number, and it's been years and people are concerned. I noticed there are a lot of houses for sale on Poplar, and Daryl, do you have any kind of number? I would like it if we just go ahead and adopt the measures that are in process at the Maryland level, but it seems as if this project is racing to the finish line and may, even though it's a 99-year lease and it's going to outlive even my children because they're in their.
Yeah. So Sally, that's at about 2 minutes. I'm going to let Daryl respond to that initial question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. And let me first say that this current city code follows the state guidelines. If the state changes the standards for rainstorms, we will do as well. I don't believe we're allowed to change the storm criteria. That is a number that comes from the state. We have actively supported the legislation in the state to change the rainfall total. So Cindy DeBala and others have been actively involved in that. So if that should happen, we are definitely on board. In terms of the requirements for this particular plan, they're required to provide the primary aspect of the site is redevelopment, which in the city code is a 50% treatment of the runoff. Mm-hmm. However, anything beyond the existing impervious area is required to meet the new development standard. So this particular project is a hybrid. It will have to meet the 50% for the existing impervious area and then 100% for the new added. And the last I saw, which was on the concept level, there was 8,000 square feet of new impervious area to which they would have to treat 100%. That being said, we are going to be getting and expect to see the site plan and the final permit plans for stormwater based on what NDC has submitted. They exceed the requirements. The council will have to determine whether or not they have met their expectation of significantly exceeding the requirements. There may be some additional aspects that they could take a look at in terms of permeable pavement or other things. So we will definitely be working with them on identifying those aspects. There was one other part of your question that just popped out of my mind. If it comes back, I will.
Well, will the city wait until, it seems as if this project may get approved and the old antiquated stormwater rules of 20, 30, 40 years ago will be grandfathered in, even though it's pretty much 100-year lease.
These stormwater rules that we're following were changed most recently in 2009, so they're not that old, though they certainly are dated. So they're not 30 years old, but they're getting there.
But doesn't the mayor preside over the stormwater board? And because we seeded from Montgomery County, doesn't she have the power to just say, because of the climate emergency declaration, we're just going to up it to 100% and we're going to protect the downhill residents in the Chesapeake Bay?
Well, we certainly intend to protect the downhill residents. One of the next aspects of the plan will be an analysis of capacity of the downhill, the downstream stormwater structures. So we'll need, NDC will have to show us how their stormwater will be handled by the existing structure. I also want to point out that what we have now is a totally uncontrolled site. There is no stormwater management features on the Takoma Junction lot, not one.
Well,
So anything that
forest is
gets
like
added, right.
The forest is basically a big green roof. The bioretention trench, I think, is a depth of 12 inches.
It is deeper than that as a bioretention facility. They're usually 3 feet or more deep. The green roof is a fairly thin thing, but the treatment capacity for the green roof and the bioretention facility will be analyzed by NDC, depending on whether or not they can create an infiltration basin in that bioretention. It may provide some recharge. But again, as I was saying, the site is currently uncontrolled. All the stormwater from the site runs down the hill. A sloped wooded site is problematic for stormwater, as you can imagine, because of the slope, a lot of the water runs off. There is some water that runs to the front of the site, and any look at the topography of that site will show where the topographic lines are. All the water on the site ends up rolling down Carroll Avenue if it goes to the front, Columbia, Poplar, or running down the hill. So we're going to be continuing to receive that water as we do now in the existing conditions with the proposed conditions, but we will add to that the treatment capacity that NDC is developing with the green roof and the bioretention facility.
Great. Thank you, Sally, for your questions. All right, we're moving on to Steve Smith, and then I see raised hands from Tracy Duvall, Jeffrey Hopkins, and Richard Wiley. So we'll try to get to you all, but Steve Smith, you are first, and you
I'll try
have
to
2
go quick.
minutes.
Yeah, I'll try to go quick. So I already learned a lot. So it sounds like that there's a requirement and that the city has asked that NDC significantly exceed that. So I just at some point, somebody, if they could clarify that. So that's something the council will have to decide whether it's enough significantly exceeded. And that's something we can talk to our council members about. So that's good to hear. I had a question about the tree cover. So what fraction of the current trees, thinking of the back of the site, would be removed during construction? And then of that, how much of that would be replaced? Thanks.
I don't know if Jingjing has the current information. The information I have is from the concept plan, which there was a total of 91 trees on the lot. They were preserving 59 of them and removing 32. Many of those were undesirable, but I think that has since changed with some of the site plan changes, and those numbers may have been increased in terms of the removals.
Yeah, Jingjing or Bradley, did you have any comments on that?
So Brad, you can correct me if I'm wrong. From my memory, we are removing 36 inch perimeter trees, and 30, since the county asked us to do additional tree service, so I'm also removing, after the tree survey, we are removing 39 1 inch perimeter trees. So totally 69 trees. And we are replanting 34 shade trees and 10 evergreen trees and 32 shrubs.
So that's replanting just in the rear, not counting the planters in the front.
Yeah. So we also have some planting in the front.
Yeah, don't want to count that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Great, Steve, thank you for your question. All right, next, Tracy Duvall. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, I live across the street, across Columbia from the back of the proposed facility, right across from where the bioretention facility would be. So I'm curious what it would look like. Will it have plants growing out of it, or is it just a trough? And I'm also curious what types of plants you anticipate putting on the green roof, both green roofs. And most importantly, can you point to another bioretention facility in the DC area that we could inspect that we could look at so we would understand more concretely what you're proposing, whether it's in an NDC development or somewhere else? Is there a model?
Brad, can you help on that question?
Yeah, so
Well,
Bradley, I'm asking you on
Sorry.
mute now. Yep.
Oh, I am muted, sorry, having trouble with that. Yeah, the intention would be that there would be vegetation growing out of it, you know, maybe not right on day one, year one, but it would be planted. The growing media for the green roof right now is just proposed to be sedums and grasses. Again, it's not, for a variety of reasons, it's not being proposed as really an unoccupiable garden roof. It's just purely for stormwater management. What was the third part of your question? I'm sorry.
Is there a bioretention facility in the DC area that you could point to as an example?
Sure. Maybe not exactly in this concept, but there are these planner concepts, Montgomery County parking garage projects that have been done. I can certainly gather up a list of a few. I mean, generally, oftentimes this type of facility gets VE'd out of projects because it's very expensive. But you know, this project has very little options in terms of where we can put stormwater management. So we're actually going with a very expensive option in this case. So because of its adjacency to the building, we're forced to build it into a slope. So, you know, yeah, I mean, we're very, very limited in where we can implement stormwater management. So, you know, that's just something to keep in mind too when you're asking for more. Our only available space on the site is a wooded slope, right? So it's just something important to keep in mind.
You don't have a specific place you can point to? Example?
Well, there's, I guess one project that I've worked on very recently would be a Montgomery County parking garage. I can certainly, Montgomery College parking garage.
Montgomery College, okay.
Yep, sorry. Yep.
Yeah, the city has dozens of bioretention facilities, but as Bradley mentioned, they're slightly different. Usually they take road-related runoff, you know, so they cut through the curbs and then there's a planted area inside. We do have some facilities that are a structure like this that are topped with permeable pavers. Outside the community center is one of them. And also on Roanoke Avenue, it's 4 foot deep biomedium underneath pavers. But I can give you some of that. I think, like Bradley said, this is a fairly unique situation based on the limits of the site. So if you could envision an excavation with special soils placed in, whether or not the bottom is concrete or bottom is infiltration has to do with what they determine the soil types to be once they get to that level of planning.
Let's hope they can go under the building, under the parking lot.
So I guess we have to leave the breakout
Yeah.
room.
Tracy, thank you for your question. Jeffrey and Richard, I'm sorry we didn't have time to answer your questions. We do have an online submission form on the Takoma Junction section of the city website where you can submit additional questions. We also have multiple council hearings coming up where you can also give public comment or listen in. And we thank you all for your questions. And we also thank the NDC team for being here and to Daryl for bringing her expertise. Thank you all so much. And we can all go ahead and rejoin the main session now.
Thank you.
Wanted to hear what Richard Wiley had to say from the fire department.
Yep, we'll have to get to that in another avenue or forum.
A flexible space that could adapt to different uses over time and change daily, if not, you know, seasonally, certainly. But then providing all of the other things that we're trying to do, space for bike lockers, space for the bus station, bus shelter, the tree canopy, proper lighting, and meeting the grading constraints of the site to make it accessible to everyone.
Josh, is it possible to give us sort of, and you don't have to do it tonight, the amount of square footage in those kind of like gathering spaces that you talked about? I'm just curious to get a more of a sense of it.
Sure.
And the next question is from Denise Jones.
Thank you, Roz. I am trying to understand also about the gathering space. Josh, earlier you said that basically that if you were visiting the retail, then you could use the benches and the seating area. But so that would suggest that you'd have to be a patron before you can really utilize that small, what looks to me to be small space for gathering and, you know, meeting family members or friends. And I just don't see how that that strip in front of all the entrances could be used for meetings or gatherings. You've got multiple entryways. And then you've got the trees. So that doesn't look like gathering space to me. It looks like a sidewalk strip to enter the building.
Okay, so I didn't mean to imply by saying you could use those benches when you were visiting the retail that meant you couldn't when you're not. They are open and accessible to the public. There's typically a covenant that runs with the land that ensures that it's accessible to all. The space that is, you're roughly from this bench to this bench and up to the right-of-way side, the sidewalk along the right-of-way is about 1,000 square feet. It does have this tree planting in here for some shade. But you know, in small parks and areas along retail, those can be used quite effectively and comfortably for people to meet up with friends and sit, talk. I'm not sure if they have an idea for, like they said, a community space or something that can be used where you could sign up to use the space or something, but that ability is there.
And next is Nadine Block.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. So this is what I'm getting from you. So you've measured what essentially looks to me like a pass-through sidewalk, whether or not you use that term. The real sidewalk, the quote unquote, I'll use real sidewalk, is close to the lay-by, which is where the trucks, the big semis, the garbage trucks, the delivery vehicles of all kinds, whatever, would show up. That doesn't sound like a very lovely place for cafe seating. It's going to be pretty close. I don't know exactly what, it's hard to tell because it's so small what the dimensions are, but you know, 1,000 square feet is pretty small square footage for any kind of activity. I think you could figure, you know, it wouldn't be very many people who would feel comfortable there, particularly now with any kind of social distancing. And if there's any kind of cafe seating, I'd like you to see, like what Kate requested, the numbers and what you, I think, mentioned, possibly if you're going to give away some of this square footage on the upper level. And also this brings up to me a lot of accessibility questions about ramps and things, steps that are going to limit accessibility for people and for products when you're moving them around, carts and strollers. So with the given tree planters, the seats, the doorways, people coming in and out of the doorways and the 6-foot need, it looks to me like a very narrow strip is possibly going to be left for any kind of passage, not even any kind of gathering. And this gathering space, this passageway, is right along the road, essentially. So, and it's on the north side of the building. So in the summer, that'll be good. You won't get any sun, but it'll be pretty dark and gloomy, is my guess. So I'm really confused as to the measurements. And I think given the fact that this is a publicly owned spot and we've seen incredible value by having flexible space during this it seems to me that we're really getting locked in, that there's no flexibility, given the trees, the planters, the steps, the roadway so close, the giant vehicles with exhaust. And particularly on the end towards the co-op, I know that there's some real convoluted access things with ramps and stairs. So it would be great to have actual calculations of what kind of remaining pass-through space is actually there. And if it would even accommodate more than one person shoulder to shoulder with 3 foot of distance between them, which one could argue would be minimally looking at in this post-pandemic world. And that's.
Oops. I'm sorry, I think I cut you off. Were you wrapping up? The next question then is Sue Miller again. I'll ask you to unmute.
Oh, yeah, briefly, I just want to point out that the aprons on each end, which I think you're now saying are equally like the larger parts of the open space, are in front of the cafe and the restaurant. They are on those ends. So if you're going to give them outdoor tables, you need to draw those and subtract that from the public space. I just want to be very clear. Thank you.
Thank you. And next up is Roger Schlegel, and followed by Steve Smith and David Navari.
Just 2 clarifying questions and then one other really quick. So to clarify, are you counting the tree pits themselves as gathering space? Are you counting the access ramps from the upper terrace level to the lower sidewalk as gathering space? Second clarifying question is that front sidewalk along the lay-by also to be used by delivery carts and dollies and garbage hauling? And the final question is, did the developer give any consideration to stair stepping the frontage as is done on the other side of on Carroll Avenue with that row of buildings, so that a terrace would not be necessary, even though the slope was moving downward from west to east?
Okay, I'm gonna try to recall. So in the first one, the planting areas, are they included, and the ramp, the accessible ramp and the stairs? Yes, there's just a straight line that runs around all of this is what was used. Everything excluding the sidewalk on the property. On the second question, I don't remember what it was, but the answer was yes that I wrote down. That was, using, yes, that trucks that unload and load here would be using this area to get down to the co-op. They would be using that sidewalk along the right of way. And stepping the building, I don't know. I never saw a concept that came by from the architect with you're talking about stepping vertically along the road, breaking the slab into separate pieces. I never saw them contemplate that. I'm guessing because of the height for the parking underneath, but I'm not sure.
Okay. And Steve Smith.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to point out there's, and Susan mentioned this as well, there seemed to be a communications gap in definitions. So the city in the requirements talked about public space and gathering space. And what I'm hearing from the NDC staff is open space, and that's a bit of a different concept. So I think we do need to have an ongoing discussion of what effective gathering space there is. And one thing I might put out is, for example, would there be a space for a busker and some people listening to them? Somebody reciting poetry or something. I mean, that would be, for example, a small element of public space that I think would be useful and great to have, and the type of thing we want to have in Takoma Park. And I'm not sure I see that possible here, because the wider areas are in front of the restaurants. If there's some outdoor seating, that probably doesn't work. And on one side, you've got a ramp and people going back and forth. So I'm actually not convinced even that level of small gathering is possible. And I would like to suggest that that is something we would like to have possible here. So maybe by changing the configuration of the building a little bit to add at least somewhere where there's a little more depth that allows that to happen. So thanks.
And next is David Navari.
Thank you. I'm an engineer and I'm a very simple-minded person. So I also have about 25 years of federal government consulting, and acquisition support. So typically when there's a very specific quantifiable requirement in an acquisition, like 2,700 square feet of open space or public space, the contractor would have put a nice line around the drawing and shown us where this space is and simply annotated what the space is. And I'm trying to understand where this line is and where the space is and what the definition is, as someone else said. So I'm struggling with this. I just want to get a simple answer. Did the contractor meet the city's requirements? Thank you.
And then I had a message. Denise, was that from you again? Let me find you here.
I just got a note on my screen that this is going to close in 24 seconds.
Yeah.
I'm just echoing what everyone else is saying. It looks like we are definitely losing gathering space, and I'm upset about that. The parking lot provided any number of opportunities for gathering. This does not seem to meet the requirement.
I'll go ahead and start. I'm Roz Grigsby. I'm Community Development Manager for the city, and this session is on public space. We have a few house rules. Please raise your hand with the button at the bottom of your screen in order to indicate a desire to speak. And if you are on the phone calling in, you can raise a hand through *9 and it will show up on the screen and we can recognize you. Or you can mute and unmute on the phone through *6. We have consultants from NDC in the room here answering questions. So we're asking people to keep it short and keep it question focused for clarification and information. And we'll try and take as many calls as we can in the time we have. And I see we're already jumping in. So Andrew Strongin, I think you're first on the list. I will ask you, let's see.
Roz, I think I'm unmuted already.
Okay, go ahead then.
Thank you for the opportunity to ask a question. So this project has promised an amount of public space. When it was first conceived, 2 of the council members voted no, and 2 said that the amount of public space originally proposed was the minimum they would expect, and only if they would revitalize B.Y. Morrison Park in connection with the rest of the project. And since that time, the public space has shrunk. What used to be called a delivery lane is now being called the sidewalk. The rest of the sidewalk is now being called public gathering space. And rumor has it that the bike share is going to be pushed over into B.Y. Morrison Park. So some of us wonder where the public space is actually going to be and whether it's going to be anything more than just a sidewalk. That's my question.
Okay, it sounds like that's really a question directed to council. They are the decision makers on this. And it gives me an opportunity to just say to the group, we have a online public comment feature on the Takoma Junction Redevelopment page available to put your comments in, and they are publicly visible and council will see them there. Next up is Mike Roost. I know you had tried in the last.
I'm sorry,
meeting.
Roz. Can you guys
Yeah.
hear me? Okay,
Yes.
I agree that Andrew's question is one directed to the council, so I won't step into those shoes. But I would like to correct the amount of public space from the plan the council approved is actually increased, not decreased. I just wanted to put that for the record. And, you know, we have the technical plans to show that, but it is increased, not decreased.
Thank you. And Mike, I'm asking you to unmute so you get a chance to speak.
Okay. The numerous planters, I was curious whether those are going to have benches for people to actually sit down along the edges of those. And also, was the square footage, the total square footage of all those planters mandated by the city council or the county? How did we come up with the square footage of all those planters?
So Josh Sloan is joining us here. He's the landscape architect for Neighborhood Development Company. Josh, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. So the planter area isn't specifically set, but there is a code requirement for a certain amount of tree canopy over any open space. And to meet that tree canopy with, oh, I thought I was getting some feedback.
Right.
To meet that tree canopy with mature trees that will actually create what we're looking for, we do need a certain soil volume, and that soil volume dictates basically the size of our planters, because we know in urban environments how deep tree roots typically go, and it's not that deep. So to get enough soil volume to create healthy tree canopy, we did specifically establish these planting areas. Several of them are surrounded by benches, which will be permanent cast in place benches that will be there year round for anyone to sit at.
Next up is Susan Huffman. I'm asking you to unmute so you can ask, and following her will be Artie Harris and then Karen Elrich.
My question is the public space. Does that include the bus stop area? Does it include the part that's taken up with the planters? And does it include the area right next to the lay zone where the trucks will come through and the garbage will come through? Because the pictures are not correct. The pictures do not show a bus shelter and they do not show a truck there. You actually have cars parked in front of it, which I don't think is how it's going to be. If you look at the pictures you put out, they're cars, but people won't be getting out of their cars to use public space, to join their friends. It's going to be a lay-by for trucks. So how much of it is actually public space? Minus the bus shelter, minus the tree containers, and minus the area right next to where the trucks are going to be, and people are going to be wheeling things in and out.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen again, just so we can clarify a little bit about what was calculated for what. So there definitely is a difference between what the zoning ordinance requires under code and then what the 2,700 square feet that's mentioned in the resolution from the city requires. Shoot, I did it so easily last time. So this screen is a part of the planting plan. I hope everyone can see. The gray, dark gray on the bottom is the building. Carroll Avenue is up on top. You can see the right-of-way line that cuts through the property. The lay-by is partially on the property. The blue area is sidewalk that's in some planting area that's on the property. It was not included in the number that Jingjing mentioned, the 3,800 square feet. The 3,800 square feet is shown in green here. It is from the planters, the specialty paving, the steps, the ramps, the sidewalk connections to the building. The bus stop is included in that area, but that's 89 square feet. So we'd be down to 3,700 square feet or so of the green area. And then, so that's how it all calculates out.
So
I'm Susan, sorry, and if I could just address, I'm sorry, can people hear me?
Yes.
I could address kind of, another kind of part of your question. I mean, and I've heard many comments lately and over the years about there'll be trash trucks there, there'll be trucks there, both from an aesthetic and safety point of view. I mean, I would like to point out that the lay-by is there for the use of the co-op. The Takoma Junction project that we are proposing could have been loaded entirely within the project. There would have been no need for that. The co-op insisted that they must have 18-wheeler trucks, that there was no alternative way to supply their store. They insisted that there was no way to schedule these at off hours, that they had to be available at any time, day or night. So, questions about the lay-by, the trucks, the garbage and all, I would suggest you address those to the co-op because the lay-by is being built for them and for their purposes.
I totally disagree because the lay-by is part of the co-op has always been there forever, and I strongly support it. So I'm interested in the city. I shouldn't probably take all this time, but so how would the city people on the city council, how do you imagine the space that's left will be used by people, the remaining thin strip, which is where people will be coming in and out, off the street, off the lay-by, into the stores? Is that public space? Is that what we thought would be public space when we asked for public space?
I'm not sure that there are council members on this breakout group to answer that, but that's certainly a determination they'll need to make. But next person is Karen Elrich.
Yes, I wanted to check, will the restaurants and cafes being places put out chairs and tables into this public space, which would then become for private use? And is there anywhere really that's large enough for a gathering that wouldn't affect the traffic that's walking down there? So I just see a large sidewalk for people to push their carriages with and to walk. And I can't imagine a place to gather in this thin strip that goes across, especially if you're going to be putting private tables and chairs out there.
I think a lot of that's going to be driven by the specific tenants and having enough space above and beyond the 2,700 square feet to accommodate that. We can come up with an exhibit to show where that might happen. One of the tenants that we were working with is that the most dynamic spaces in most urban areas, even small towns, let alone larger areas, larger cities, the streets and the sidewalks are the place where people meet, where they greet, where they hang out, where they sit and chat, grab a coffee. And a lot of this is very flexible open space for those things to happen. I'm not sure, like Roz said, what the council members will make their determination based on that. But the depth from the curb to the building in some areas being over 20 feet, plenty of things can happen in those areas, and I think the dynamic space will allow that to happen.
The next person to raise a hand is Esther Siegel. I'm asking you to unmute. If others want to make comments, please raise a hand.
Okay, hi, thanks. The last session, it was really pointed out how really what we're not talking about is public space for gatherings that are like concerts or small things matter, right? Things like that. So let's be honest that this is not a public space. This is a sidewalks, narrow sidewalks where somebody can sit and somebody can, maybe have a cup of coffee, but it is not a public space for the community. And I just wish people would be honest about it. That's the first thing. The second thing is I really have to take exception about the lay-by that Adrian said. My husband is a deliverer to the co-op. He knows that this cannot work for a zillion reasons that have been spoken about over and over and over again. A co-op cannot say to a deliverer, I only want you to bring this size truck. A truck has a semi goes to 10, 15, sometimes 20 deliveries a day. And that's why they have a big truck. So you can't expect the co-op to say to a deliverer, oh no, we just want you to bring us a small truck, or you have to come between this time and this time. It doesn't work. And that's one of the huge problems that this whole project is sort of ignoring or glossing over, because the co-op is going to suffer, and nobody seems to care on the council, and clearly the developer doesn't care. And I'm really sorry, but we have to be honest about what is really and truly going on here.
Thank you, Esther. I'll be glad to address both of those points. On the issue of the co-op and the loading, the co-op has stated in writing that it will work. I mean, they've said it publicly. We have it in the document that they provided to us. No one put a gun to their head. So the co-op has said that it will work. That's just a fact. Secondly, about the amount of public space, I mean, I'll go back to something else that's said in this presentation. It is a small space, and it's only so much, that the site can accommodate. And no, it is not like a large public gathering space where you could hold concerts and you can have hundreds of people. There is not enough room to do that. What we have tried to do was to balance the desire of the city to have a commercial space, to be viable, to have some public gathering space. It tries to accomplish all that. It is not designed to be a large, civic plaza where you hold rallies and things like that. It's designed to be a commercial building primarily that accommodates, that brings people to it in a commercial fashion, and it has some room. So, no one is trying to hide the ball. It is the amount of public space that the council approved in essentially the same formation the council approves on multiple occasions. So we are being honest about it.
Yes. Next up is Carter Doherty, and I'm having a little trouble with my chat, but I think it's helpful to continue to see the screen share that Josh is showing us now. So I'm going to ask that we keep that up for the conversation. Carter, then Andrew Strongen, and then Steve Kern.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to ask if the various experts here, Roz, Adrian, I'm sorry, I missed the other name. I'm juggling.
Okay.
Thank you. My apologies. Could weigh in on your experience, what you know about laybys in other circumstances, whether it turns out to be a better solution than just stopping on the street, that sort of thing. I mean, we in Takoma Park, this is our one experience with this, so it would be useful to have some context from experts like you.
So I typically get myself in trouble by saying that I think deliveries and things work very well when they're just happen on the street and people end up working their way around them.
Well, that happens all over Takoma Park anyway. So hypothetically, this is an improvement on this.
They certainly will maintain traffic better because you have a space to specifically get the truck out of the traffic flow at the light. And the shift to the west allowed a lot of things to happen. It allowed the accessible route crossing the street to be maintained. It kept safe sight distances and things like that. And then just the turning movement itself, it worked out quite well, so that it could be, you could bring in a large truck the size that the co-op says they need, in without back and forth movements, things like that, backing in or any kind of anything like that. So it will maintain a better traffic flow for people going around. And then the sidewalk system that we had to develop to work with that, the two-tiered system for circulation, ended up being kind of interesting, I think.
Adrian, did you want to respond to that? Okay, I'll jump in then. And
No,
just,
I think that was better than I could have explained. Thank you.
I would just also add that we were given delivery data from the co-op a couple of years ago and mapped it out. It's available on the website under the Takoma Junction documents page. And what we saw was that the bulk of the deliveries come early in the morning. And I think people somehow have an impression that there's going to be a line of trucks there all day and the deliveries are going to block the sidewalk. And what we know from experience is that that's not how they're spread out in the day, that the bulk of them come early in the morning, definitely before noon, and that the sidewalk, so the way the space is laid out, as Josh has said, is, you know, the sidewalk's not counted in the 3,800 square feet of public space. Public spaces can serve many purposes. It's not defined as gathering space. It's not meant to be strictly soccer fields or concert venues. It's meant to be exactly the kind of diverse use that this promises us, that it can be people bumping into each other early in this conversation. I think Roger Schlegel sort of coined the word about the bump factor, of where you see friends and stop and chat, grab a coffee.
That was Amy Barron, actually.
Okay, yeah. Grab a coffee and stand on the sidewalk.
6 long years ago.
So there are many types of public space. And I also just think it's really important to mention, as Andrew did initially, that this is in context with B.Y. Morrison across the street. And B.Y. Morrison is very underutilized. So what we know from that experience is that space itself, space by itself, square footage or squared off space by itself doesn't guarantee use or success. What we need is space that's activated and that serves multiple purposes.
Yeah, space with attractors, and people are the best attractors. So a couple cafe seats and a couple benches where you have something to pick up a coffee or whatever it is, that starts multiplying, I think. So it's really interesting watching people in these urban places.
So next up is Andrew Strongen, and then Steve Kern and Susan Huffman again. So I'm going to ask you to unmute, Andrew.
Thank you. I think I'm unmuted now. I appreciate the opportunity to ask a second question. I'm still interested in the answer to my first question, but I'll leave it for now. So we have a lay-by lane. I would have left it alone, except everybody else is talking about it. Montgomery County Department of Transportation, Montgomery County Department of Permitting Services, the experts at Park and Planning all say this is unsafe and not to standard. We're waiting to hear from State Highway. City law is the same as the county law with respect to parking within so many feet of a crosswalk, cross street, a traffic light. I'm trying to understand how the city is going to review its rights inside of the right-of-way line, which you see bisecting that lay-by lane, and explain how this is a good idea. I listened very carefully to the explanation that the lay-by lane is just for the benefit of the co-op, but of course that's demonstrably untrue. This development has to be self-contained. And this development requires loading provisions. And the loading ordinarily has to be on site. But the loading here is not on site, it's in front, in the right of way. And so I'm trying to understand how this is a good idea right in the middle of a fraud intersection, because nobody has yet explained that. So the question is, what's up with that? It seems to be unsafe and illegal according to everybody except the city and NDC.
Andrew, again, the quote, the late Patrick Moynihan, you're entitled to your own opinion, but not your own facts. This development could have easily accommodated the loading for its uses on site. But in order to accommodate the co-op, we required a lay-by for their 18-wheeler trucks, which they said could not be scheduled. And so that is why it was there. Now that because we have to build a lay-by, we can use it for loading, but if we did not have to accommodate the co-op, we would not have built a lay-by, number one. Number two, you said that everyone said it is unsafe. I'll get into the details, but that is not true. And thirdly, let's look at the current situation. I mean, if you think that a carefully engineered lay-by that has been designed with traffic experts and has been reviewed by various agencies is less safe than the current environment where you've got a parking lot where people park, where people get out of their cars with kids, that is not designed for loading, where trucks can pull in at odd angles and pull out with no line of traffic. If you think that is safer than a lay-by, then I'm sorry, I disagree with you. So I would examine the current situation. I would examine the requirements as stated by the co-op and look at those as opposed to, a critique of what we have done in our best judgment, using experts and working with existing site conditions to try to make a safer situation for co-op deliveries.
So what is the answer, though, specifically to the county DOT that says that this is an unsafe arrangement, given the bike lane next, which is going to be adjacent to it, and the rest of the facts on the ground? I can quote Ozymandias to you, but that's not the point of this conversation right now. I'm trying to understand. None of us gets to have our own facts. We all have to share. We have to share facts.
The missing piece here, of course, is that it's State Highways Road, and they have not weighed in.
It is not State Highways Road. State Highway has the part to the middle of the lay-by, which is the right-of-way. The rest of it is the city's, with an unresolved dedication issue. But the rest is the city's, and the city has its own call to make.
And we're almost out of time, but it's important to say that State Highway has to weigh in on this, and they have not determined one way or the other.
And you promised not to raise this subject until State Highway weighed in, and yet here we are, which is why